Please wait, little friend, please wait. Seeing that Su'er was about to leave, Daoist Tian broke into a sweat. There were 3 sects left behind by the Night Demon clan's 3 sages, Heaven's Secret Sect, Earth Fiend Sect and Feng Chen Sect. As the leader of the other sects, even the emperor had to give due respect to the Heaven's Secret Sect. To become the successor of the Heaven's Secret Sect was something that people didn't even dare to dream about. If the Heaven's Secret Sect openly recruited disciples, the applicants would be enough to fill an entire mountain range. The people of the Heaven's Secret Sect could find out Heaven's secrets. This meant that they could foretell the future, see back into the past and reveal the secrets of the present. Although their battle power wasn't great, who wouldn't want this sort of ability? Countless people had begged to become disciples of the Heaven's Secret Sect. Even the most powerful experts, as well as the noble emperor, had to treat them with utmost respect. They never knew when they would require their assistance one day. Moreover, the revenge and retaliation from one who could see Heaven's secrets was far too terrifying if they were offended. It was quite strange though, although the Heaven's Secret Sect and Feng Chen Sect were held in such high regard, they had to beg their successors to join. Ling Chen had initially refused, and now Su'er was also refusing. Daoist Tian Qing's body blurred, and he reappeared in front of Su'er. He once again bowed to her. Little friend, please do not be afraid. We hold no ill intentions towards you. It is as I just said, I am the only one left in my generation in the Heaven's Secret Sect. I've spent a long time searching for a suitable successor, and I finally found this little friend. I hope that little friend can hear me out. Daoist Tian Qing's voice was calm and amicable, and anyone listening to it would gradually relax. Su'er became a bit less anxious, but immediately, a rowdy voice yelled out. That's right, that's right. We're here to find a disciple. This old man's the sect leader of the Heaven's Secret Sect. The Heaven's Secret Sect, I tell you. Lil girl, this is the best thing that will ever happen to you. If you join the Heaven's Secret Sect, you can know whatever you want to know. Even the strongest expert in the world will have to step to the side when you walk past, and even the emperor will treat you with respect. When the time comes, you can have as much money as you want, and whatever man you want. Even if you want 72 male concubines, that's absolutely possible. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and call that old man your master and become the successor of the Heaven's Secret Sect. When this old thing is dead, you can do whatever you want. Look at me, and my sincere eyes. Everything I said was the absolute truth. Saliva flew everywhere as Xiao Fengchen rambled on while wildly gesticulating. His body language seemed to convey even more than his mouth was. His words caused her to become even more frightened, and her face was completely pale. This old man was the manifestation of madness. Su'er retreated a few steps, and simply turned and ran. Xiao Fengchen. Daoist Tian Qing was furious at this point. Xiao Fengchen just had to yell like that when the girl was finally calming down. Let alone a little girl like her, even a grown man would be scared away by him. He glared at Xiao Fengchen as he yelled, "Do you even know how to speak? Do you think this is like 10,000 years ago? The Heaven's Secret Sect has hidden away for such a long time, there's barely anyone who knows about it anymore. That little girl's evidently one of those people from another world, so it's impossible for her to know about it. Everything you just said would make someone think you're absolutely mad. Who would believe you? I finally found the perfect successor. What are you going to do if you scare her away?" Daoist Tian Qing looked over and saw that Su'er had already taken out a teleport scroll, and his hair almost stood on end. He swished his horsetail whisk, and a semi-transparent light descended from the sky and covered Su'er's body. Su'er immediately froze, unable to move at all. Only her eyes trembled, full of shock and fear. Xiao Fengchen sulked as he stood at a distance. He knew what sort of person Daoist Tian Qing was. As someone who cultivated in the Tao, he had gradually severed away his 7 emotions and 6 desires. Only very rarely would he become extremely emotional. This was the first time Xiao Fengchen had seen him so furious. Evidently, Daoist Tian Qing was very worried about this matter, as it concerned the extinction of his heaven's secret sect. As such, he couldn't hold back as he roared at Xiao Fengchen. Xiao Fengchen rubbed his nose. That little girl was indeed scared off by him, so he could only mutter, "It's not like you don't know how my personality is. If it wasn't because I also wanted you to find a successor, why would I have stayed in this crappy place for so long? That boy Ling Tian brought me out of that damn place, and fulfilled my greatest wish. In order to help him, I need to help you find a successor. Goddamn, you convince her by yourself then. I won't say a single word from now on." Daoist Tian Qing's forehead was covered in sweat. He had finally found a suitable successor, and was now forced to bind her like this. If this little girl wasn't willing. He slowly walked forwards in front of Su'er, and used his warmest and kindest voice and expression, "Little friend, please do not be angry or afraid. I had no choice but to bind you. We're really not bad people, and don't hold any ill intentions towards you. I just hope that you can listen to me first, and I will release you immediately. Afterwards, whether little friend wants to stay or leave, I won't try to stop you at all. Please forgive me for doing this." Daoist Tian Qing was about to go into the details about the Heaven's secret sect, such as the powers and status she would receive. He was fully confident that after hearing the complete explanation, she would be willing to join. However, before he could start speaking, Su'er blurted out a question, You just mentioned Ling Tian, is he a player like me?" Hearing the name Ling Tian, Xiao Fengchen's ears perked up, and he immediately jumped up, "Of course. What, do you know him?" "Right, he also comes from another world, maybe you're friends or something. I'll have you know that Ling Tian is my disciple, and is my Fengchen sect successor. He's an absolute genius." Daoist Tian Qing glared at Xiao Fengchen, who promptly stopped speaking. Daoist Tian Qing smiled amicably, "Little friend Ling Tian is indeed a player from another world. Do you know him by any chance? Then what did you say big brother Ling Tian needed help with? Is it something really difficult and really important, and might take a long time?" Su'er hurriedly asked. Ling Chen had departed to do something in the game. When she heard Xiao Fengchen and Daoist Tian Qing speaking, she suddenly thought of the reason why Ling Chen had left. Su'er's reaction caused Xiao Fengchen's eyes to light up. He let out a long sigh, and started to exaggerate Ling Chen's plight. He needs to find some things, which he says are more important than his life. Even if he searches every inch of the forgotten continent, he has to find them, no matter what. Seeing that he was serious, as his master, I decided to help him. The only person who can help Ling Tian is this old man. Who would have thought that this old guy isn't able to help anymore? Only his successor will be able to help Ling Tian. That's why we're looking so desperately for a successor for him. Aha, that's indeed how it is, Daoist Tian Qing said calmly. Half a month ago, Brother Xiao asked me to reveal the Heaven's secrets to help Ling Tian find some things. Using the Heaven's secret sect's methods to find objects is extremely simple. However, it's a pity that I'm already at my limit. If I continue to reveal the Heaven's secrets, I will receive divine punishment, and immediately die. Only by finding a successor will I be able to help little friend Ling Tian. Little friend Ling Tian's matter seems to be quite important, but it will be almost impossible for him to find what he seeks in the vast forgotten continent. If he doesn't have the aid of the Heaven's secrets, he may have to spend his entire life searching. As such, Brother Xiao and I have been searching for a successor for my Heaven's secret sect, and finally found little friend today." From Su'er's reaction, Daoist Tian Qing could see that she not only knew Ling Tian, but was quite close with him. As such, he didn't bother talking about the Heaven's secret sect, but instead focused on Ling Tian's quest. For the Heaven's secret sect, he would have to act selfishly. As soon as he finished speaking, he began to sweat even more. Look for some things. Heaven's secrets. Su'er felt quite confused, but she knew that what they were talking about was related to Ling Chen leaving. As such, she asked, if I join your Heaven's secret sect, will I be able to help big brother Ling Chen find what he's looking for? Indeed. The requirements for becoming the successor of the Heaven's secret sect are extremely strict. Perhaps you are the only one in the entire world who can help him. Taoist Tian Qing said. The scene of Ling Chen leaving surfaced in Su'er's mind, as well as Shao Qi's departure. Su'er softly nodded her head. The weakness in her eyes were replaced with a look of determination. Grandpa, I believe you. If I can help big brother Ling Chen, I'm willing to join the Heaven's secret sect. The binding had been lifted, but Su'er did not leave. She looked at Taoist Tian Qing with determination in her eyes. She wanted to be able to help Ling Chen, even if it was a bit. Although she couldn't confirm whether these two old men were good or evil, or whether they were telling the truth or not, she simply wanted to help him. Taoist Tian Qing was overwhelmed with joy, but he did his best to keep it inside of him. He slowly nodded his head, but his voice still trembled. Good, good, from today onwards, you are my Heaven's secret sect's 15th generation disciple. When you have mastered the power of the Heaven's secrets, you will be the Heaven's secret sect's 15th generation sect leader. The members of Heart's Dream had been brought together by Meng Xian. Now that Heart's Dream had been destroyed, their paths all diverged. For that sliver of hope, Ling Chen had embarked on an almost impossible quest. Similarly, for a sliver of hope, as well as to help Ling Chen, Shao Qi had gone to the lava purgatory. By a turn of fate, Su'er had met Taoist Tian Qing, and joined the Heaven's secret sect to help Ling Chen, although she hadn't understood what joining the sect or becoming the sect leader really meant. Yun Meng Xian gave up on her battle profession and worked with Li Xiaoshui to develop the piece of land. Mu Bingyao took Tian to dangerous regions to train. Tian originally never went to those sorts of places, but in order to become stronger and to hone her battle sense, Mu Bingyao had no other choice. Mu Bingyao wanted Tian to unlock the full potential of her strongest profession. South of the Vermilion Bird City, lava purgatory. The heat waves caused Shao Qi's skin to turn bright red. She hadn't stopped even once on her way from the Vermilion Bird City to the lava purgatory. As she rode on, she became more and more determined to follow through with her decision. When she arrived, she called back her mount and took out the feather that the vermilion bird had given her. She gripped it tightly in her hand. After yelling out the vermilion bird's name, there would be no going back. Since she was already here, she wouldn't allow herself to harbor any regrets. Big brother Ling Chen, I believe in you. Shao Qi lifted up the feather and closed her eyes. Within her mind flashed many familiar figures. When she opened her eyes, there was not a hint of hesitation anymore. She yelled out, "Vermilion bird! Vermilion bird!" The vermilion bird's feather lit up, and a gigantic crimson shadow appeared in the sky. It was the image of a bird radiating majesty and power. The bird had the head and tail of a phoenix, claws of an eagle, neck of a snake, and was covered in burning, crimson feathers. It was the vermilion bird's phantasm. You've come. It's been quite a while, you must have had quite a lot of doubts about coming. The vermilion bird's voice boomed out. The first time she had met the vermilion bird, Shao Qi's heart had been full of terror and apprehension. This time, she was incredibly calm. She looked up and replied in a loud voice, "Vermilion bird, I wish to inherit your flames." Very good. That is the answer I hoped for. However, I want to remind you, once you enter the lava purgatory, until you finish the inheritance, you will not be able to leave in body or in spirit. That means you will not be able to return to your own world. Have you prepared for this? Yes, and I won't regret it either. If you can give me power, and even cure my illness, I will do all I can to thank you. Shao Qi said. There's no need to thank me, this is my destiny. You will receive great benefits, and will also fulfill one of my greatest wishes. If you've made up your mind, then walk forwards into the lava purgatory. Xiaoqi didn't reply as she took a step into the lava purgatory. Whoosh! A ball of flames ignited under Xiaoqi's feet, and began to expand. Soon, it covered her entire body. Xiaoqi let out a gasp of shock, but immediately, her fear turned into wonder and awe. She looked at the flames around her. They were definitely real, but she didn't feel any heat from them at all. A gust of wind blew over, causing the flames to grow even more. All of Xiaoqi's clothes and equipment were instantly incinerated, revealing her beautiful body. Ah! Xiaoqi instinctively cried out, and covered her chest with her arms. However, her arms and small hands weren't able to cover her entire body. What do you need those low-grade equipment for? If you bring them into the lava purgatory, they will be incinerated anyways. As the inheritor of my vermilion bird's flames, how can normal equipment match up to the flames you will inherit? Because you are not of my clan, and do not have feathers, I will make a battle suit of holy fire for you from my feathers. Prepare yourself for the inheritance. The first few days will be the most painful part of the inheritance. If you can endure it, the rest of the process will go smoothly. If you can't endure it, then your consciousness will be consumed by my vermilion bird's flames, and will disappear. It is too late to change your mind, so please be prepared. The vermilion bird's voice gradually dissipated, and Xiaoqi's body and the flames around it also disappeared. At the same time, in the fairy forest. With Xiao Hui leading the way, Ling Chen quickly found the bewildering formation, the entrance to the fairy realm. This time, Ling Chen didn't need Xiao Hui to show him how to activate the teleportation channels. After all, he had gone through all of them before. Very soon, Ling Chen passed through the bewildering formation. The scenery in front of him changed, and he once again saw the beautiful fairy realm. This was the third time he had come to the fairy realm, but he felt completely different to how he had felt the first two times. La la la, la 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 la, la 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 la, the sound of cheerful singing traveled into Ling Chen's ears. The voice sounded young and sweet, and the song consisted of just la-la. This song should have sounded quite plain, but Ling Chen couldn't help but listen to it as he stood still. The song was extremely simple, yet it made him feel calmer, as if it contained some sort of magic. When he came back to his senses, it felt as if a long time had passed. This voice. Kair, is it you? Ling Chen looked around him as he shouted out. This voice was most probably Kair's, but because she was so small, it was hard to see her in the sea of flowers and grasses. Ee. The singing stopped, and a light blue figure floated out of the sea of flowers and grasses. It was a little girl who was only about half a meter tall, and was wearing a light blue gown. She had black hair, and her eyes shone like stars. On her back were two wings that were quickly flapping, and she was holding a small basket in her hands. It was indeed Kair. When Kair saw Ling Chen, her eyes widened and she stared for a long time, unable to believe her eyes. Her little mouth opened wide, and she flew over with a swish as her eyes sparkled. Big brother. It's really Big brother. Big brother's fine, and he actually came out. Dad and Granny said that Big brother went to a very horrible place, and might never come out. But, Big brother actually came out. Awesome, awesome. Kair flew around him as she excitedly yelled out. The joy and happiness that she displayed caused Ling Chen to feel moved. He smiled as he said, Kair, long time no see. Are you here to collect flower nectar? Kair comes out to collect flower nectar every day. Just like butterflies and bees, flower nectar is our food. Kair said as she happily nodded. Her head tilted as she continued, however, after eating your human food, flower nectar doesn't taste as good anymore, and I always feel like eating human food, and I also miss those big sisters. Big brother, are you here to visit Kair? Did the big sisters come? I really want to see the prettiest and kindest one, big sister Shura. I like her the most. Ling Chen trembled, and his expression froze for a split second. However, he immediately recovered and smiled. I came here today to play with Kair, as well as to talk to your dad, and Granny. Kair, can you take me to meet them? Okay. Kair immediately nodded. She flicked her wrist, and the little basket mysteriously vanished. She flew in front of Ling Chen as she talked. Dad and Granny have always kept Big Brother in their thoughts. After Big Brother vanished, they said that Big Brother went to a very dangerous place, and would probably never be able to come out. They were really worried about you, and blamed themselves, and would often say that they hated themselves for what they did. And Big Sister's been really sad as well, and hasn't played with Kair in days. If they see Big Brother, they'll definitely be really happy. Ling Chen, the fairy realm was quite large, and took up nearly a quarter of the fairy forest. However, there were only roughly 2,000 or so fairies living there. It was quite tragic to see that the once powerful fairy clan had been reduced to such a state. The reason for this was because of the current low fertility rate of the fairies, as well as the fact that they were sealed inside the fairy realm. If they continued on like this, even if they did not engage in any battles, they would disappear from the Forgotten Continent. The only way to restore their fairy clan was for the fairies to live among humans, and reproduce with humans. This was the fairy clan's greatest desire, but they were prevented from doing so by the barrier. Dad, Granny, Big Sister, Big Brother's back. Big Brother's come back to see us. Kair's clear voice rang out, breaking the peacefulness of the fairy realm. A green light flashed, and the first to appear was Fairy Chief Greenwood. As soon as he saw Ling Chen, a look of surprise flashed across his face. Before he quickly regained his calm, Ling Tian, you were actually able to escape from the lunar sky hell. It seems that the Moon God clan discovered that you had mistakenly entered, and that you're not a great evildoer, so they let you out. After all, the Moon Goddesses are all righteous and kind-hearted. Although they hate evil, they would never wrongly punish an innocent person. Before Ling Chen could even explain, Greenwood had already said an explanation for him. Perhaps, to the fairies, this was the only believable explanation. With the countless powerful demons and monsters in the lunar sky hell, it would have been impossible for a human like Ling Chen to escape in one piece. Hearing Greenwood's words, the 10 elders all nodded together. Behind them, a green door was silently opened, and Ning Shui appeared at the door. She didn't come out, but instead stared at Ling Chen, her eyes filled with chaotic emotions. No one could tell what she was thinking. Her first wings had been taken away by Ling Chen, and no matter what, she could only be with Ling Chen. As the daughter of the fairy chief, she had to follow this rule. After Ling Chen was forced into the lunar sky hell, she had accepted that she would be alone for the rest of her life, and had calmed herself down in just a few days. However, the person who she thought that she could never meet again was now standing right in front of her. Her heart trembled as waves crashed within it. She now somewhat understood what her grandmother meant by connected by destiny. Fairy Chief Greenwood, elders, it's been a while. Ling Chen said. Actually, only half a month had passed since he had left the fairy clan, which wasn't very long. However, that event seemed like a lifetime ago. Upon entering the fairy realm again, it felt like a long time had passed. The fairies could only see calmness in Ling Chen's eyes. There was no anger or hatred, which was what they had expected. After all, they had forced him into a place where he was almost guaranteed to die. If it wasn't for his luck, he almost certainly would have died, or spent an eternity in darkness. This was something that they had felt guilty about, causing them to regret forcing their own traditions and beliefs onto a human. Fairies were creatures with the purest souls in the entire world. Although they tried to keep their thoughts and desires pure, but their devotion to nature, as well as their traditions, was almost fanatical. Seeing Ling Tian appear before them again, they were greatly shocked, but also relieved. However, they couldn't help but wonder, why did he come back here? Last time, because of their demands, Ling Chen was forced to flee into the lunar sky hell. Surely, after escaping from the lunar sky hell, he had no reason to come back here. Moreover, he knew that the fairy realm was sealed. There would be no way to leave once he came again. Was it for revenge? Evidently not. With his strength, most fairies could instantly kill him. In that case, there was only one possibility. He must have finally come around, and decided to join the fairy clan by becoming a fairy. Otherwise, why would he have come back? Thinking to there, Greenwood spoke, Ling Tian, I'm greatly relieved that you're fine. Now, you know where that teleportation channel leads. After that day, we all reflected on our actions. Although we maintain that our beliefs were not wrong, we nearly sent you to your death, so we're glad that you're back. This time, you're probably here for something important. Here, come inside this room and take a seat. Don't worry, we won't let what happened last time repeat itself. Even if you want to rebuke us and ask for compensation, we'll be willing. No, that's all right, Ling Chen shook his head. I wasn't hurt during my time in the lunar sky hell, but instead received great benefits. Let's forget about what happened last time. This time, I have come to the fairy realm for something incredibly important. There's something I need your help with. Oh? What is it? Greenwood asked. The 10 elders also listened attentively. Ling Chen looked down as he slowly said, my little sister, because of some unforeseen events, has fallen into a very deep sleep. I want to use your fairy fountain to protect her body. Those few sentences clearly stated his reason for once again coming to the fairy realm. However, when he mentioned the name, Fairy Fountain, Greenwood and the 10 elders' faces immediately darkened. Evidently, the fairy fountain was very important to them. Kair was the first to react. She looked at Ling Chen in shock, then let out a cry of horror as she covered her mouth with her hands, saying, Big brother's little sister, Big brother's little sister, could it be that big sister Rua Rua? She, although Kair was pure and innocent, she wasn't stupid. Of course, she understood what Ling Chen had meant by Shui Rua falling into a very deep sleep. Moreover, the fairy fountain was only ever used to protect the bodies of deceased fairies. Ling Chen didn't answer Kair. To him, Shui Rua was merely asleep, and was waiting for him to wake her up. However, his silence gave Kair her answer. Kair covered her mouth with her hands as her tears leaked out, and she started to wail, Woo, big sister Rua Rua's dead. No. I don't want big sister Rua Rua to die. Kair missed her so much. Kair missed her every day. How can she die like this? This can't be real. No, Woo, Greenwood couldn't help but look surprised. He couldn't think of where Ling Chen had heard of the legend of the fairy fountain from. After all, the fairy clan had disappeared for countless years, and very few outsiders knew about the fairy fountain. Seeing the look in Ling Chen's eyes, he could see how important this little sister was to him, that he would return to this place. However, Greenwood spoke, so it's like that. My condolences about your sister. However, the fairy clan is unable to help you with this matter. Reason? Ling Chen coldly asked. After the events from last time, Ling Chen no longer had any favorable thoughts towards the fairy clan. No matter what their reasons were, they had nearly forced him to his doom. If it was any other player, they would have been stuck in the lunar sky hell forever. As such, even though he required their help, he didn't show the courtesy he would have. He was someone who repaid both favors and grudges. We're indeed unable to help you with this. The leader of the 10 elders said as he stepped forwards. An expression of worship appeared on his face. Since you know about the fairy fountain, you should also know how important it is to the fairy clan. The fairy fountain is the holiest place of our fairy realm, and is the place we must protect with our lives. The fairy fountain is a holy place granted to us by nature itself. Countless years ago, our ancestor was born from this fairy fountain. The water in the fairy fountain contains the purest nature energy in the world, which is extremely suitable for fairies. The fairy realm's flowers and grasses could grow so beautifully, and even the air and dewdrops are infused with so much life energy, all because of the fairy fountain. Even the fairy forest is affected by the fairy fountain. The fairy realm can only exist because of the fairy fountain. In the fairy realm, every fairy has flawless bodies and looks, as well as incredibly pure energy. We never succumb to illness, and our strength grows quickly. If the water from the fairy fountain is poured on a tree, it will be thriving with leaves and fruits overnight. If one drinks the water from the fairy fountain, they will be able to go an entire month without eating, drinking, or sleeping, and still feel more invigorated than otherwise, as well as be cured of many illnesses. Using the water from the fairy fountain to regularly clean one's body can allow one to retain their youthful looks. Also, as you know, putting a deceased creature into the fairy fountain can preserve, and even purify, their bodies for thousands of years. The elder began to look more serious as he continued, the fairy fountain was a blessing given to us by the nature god. If the fairy fountain disappears, or is contaminated, then the fairy clan will face great peril. Every single drop of water from the fairy fountain is incomparably important to us. Because of how close we fairies are with nature, it is impossible for us to contaminate it. However, creatures from the outside world are full of impurities. If they so much as even touch the water, all of the water in the fairy fountain will be contaminated. As such, we've never allowed any creature outside of the fairy clan to touch the fairy fountain, or even go near it. This is something that we absolutely will not compromise on. What the head elder said is what I was going to say, Greenwood sighed. After what happened last time, we all reflected on our actions. Although our traditions are important, we shouldn't force them on outsiders. However, this time, it's not us forcing you to do anything. In fact, even if you wanted to returning Shue's first wings, we wouldn't refuse. If it was anything else, we would be willing to negotiate with you. However, it is absolutely impossible to allow an outsider to be placed into our fairy fountain. After all, the fairy fountain is directly connected to the life and death of our entire clan. I'm sorry, but we can't help you with this request. In fact, even now, only 6 bodies have been placed into the fairy fountain, and they were all ancestors who made great contributions to the clan. Only they have the right to this glory. Although I'm this generation's fairy chief, even I won't be qualified to be placed into the fairy fountain after I die. We simply can't agree to your request. There were already many fairies gathered around them. Many of them looked absolutely furious that he would even think about putting an outsider's body into the fairy fountain. Fairies were all kind and amicable, for them to become angry so easily showed just how important the fairy fountain was to them. That was indeed the truth. Contaminating the fairy fountain was even more unforgivable than killing them. Even if they died, they wouldn't let any outsiders touch the fairy fountain. Ling Chen looked around him, and saw the hostile looks on the fairies' faces. If he continued to insist, it was possible that they would crush him. He slightly frowned, but calmly replied, "You can rest assured, although my little sister is a human, her body and heart are incomparably pure. She definitely won't contaminate your fairy fountain. You know just as well as I do whether humans' bodies and hearts have any impurities." Greenwood waved his hand, his face becoming more and more unseemly. Of course, there are kind-hearted humans who love purity, but living in the outside world, without nature's power cleansing them, it would be impossible for humans to be without any impurity. Moreover, even if there were such humans, what could give them the right to be placed in our fairy fountain? Since the ancient times, my clan has had countless powerful and noble fairy kings, but only 6 of them were qualified to be laid at rest in the fairy fountain. We don't even put every fairy king in, why should we put an outsider in? If we really did this, what would this mean for all our ancestors? If our fairy fountain is contaminated, then we'll become the greatest sinners of our fairy clan, and might even cause our clan to be wiped out. Enough, don't bring up this matter anymore. Unless you have the power to destroy our entire clan, we won't let you close to the fairy fountain. Greenwood's words were incredibly heavy, and carried a warning. He suddenly realized that he spoke a bit harshly, as after all, this was a human who didn't understand the true significance of the fairy fountain to the fairy clan. He began to use a kinder and calmer voice. Ling Chen, I'm sure you're still emotional from losing your loved one. To be able to come here for your loved one, I can see that you loved her very much. However, we simply can't help you with this. No outsiders have ever touched the fairy fountain before, we wouldn't even let the moon goddesses to touch it, let alone you. Dead people can't be brought back. Even if you put her in the fairy fountain, you'll just be preserving her body, and there isn't much point in that. I suggest you let this go, and properly bury her. Who said that people can't be brought back to life? Ling Chen said as he stared down Greenwood, I came here to preserve her body, so that I can bring her back to life in future. Fairy Chief Greenwood, you fairies are all supposedly kind and compassionate, will you really not help in saving a life? Greenwood frowned, and stared back into Ling Chen's eyes. All he could see within Ling Chen's eyes was calmness and determination, and none of the madness that he had expected. However, he simply couldn't fathom how a clear-minded person had declared that he would bring someone back to life so matter-of-factly. Greenwood temperately replied, Ling Chen, I know that it's difficult to accept a loved one dying. However, death must come sooner or later to living creatures. Dying is a natural process that happens to everyone. Let alone humans and fairies, even gods cannot escape death. This is something no one can change. If this was changed, then the order of the world would descend into chaos. Resurrection from the dead is simply impossible. Even if everyone in the world doesn't believe in resurrection, I'll still believe in it. If reviving someone from the dead is going against the heavens, then I'll go against the heavens. Ling Chen looked just as determined as ever. Greenwood's words simply couldn't shake him. Fairy Chief Greenwood, please agree to this selfish request of mine. After putting my little sister in the fairy fountain, I will look for a method to revive her. 30 years, please give me 30 years. No matter if I succeed or fail, I will definitely come back and agree to any request you ask of me. Even if you ask me to stay here forever, or become a slave, I will be wholeheartedly willing. Seeing Ling Chen's expression, Greenwood knew that no matter what he said, he wouldn't be able to change Ling Chen's mind. However, the fairy clan couldn't back down either. Greenwood exasperatedly sighed, and did his best to remain calm, reminding himself that Ling Chen had just lost someone important to him. He replied, put your little sister at rest in the earth, and let this matter go. Please stop deluding yourself. No matter what, we won't let any outsiders come into contact with the fairy fountain. Deluding myself? Ling Chen could no longer maintain his calm breathing. In truth, he had expected this outcome. From his experience last time, he knew that fairies were extremely stubborn creatures. Qi Yu had said that the lunar scourge could only preserve Shui Ruo's body for 7 days, and 6 days had already passed. Today was the 7th day, which meant that if he couldn't find another place to preserve her body by sundown, even if he could find a way to revive her, it would be completely useless. His last bit of hope would be extinguished. And if I insist? Ling Chen's face darkened. Since good cop hadn't worked with these fairies, it looked like he had to switch over to bad cop. If you refuse to let this go, then we will have to restrict your freedom. Just to inform you, we have already sealed the teleportation channel to the lunar sky hell. Now that you've come again, you're destined to stay here forever this time. Greenwood said in a low voice. All of the fairies around them started to glare at Ling Chen murderously. Ling Chen was a LV-20 player, and even the weakest fairy in the fairy realm would be able to take care of him easily. Ling Chen's words didn't cause them to feel any threat at all, only fury. Wanting to contaminate the fairy fountain was something they would never accept. Looks like I have no other choice. as Ling Chen said this sentence, his eyes flashed and he leapt to the right. The head elder said that the fairy realm was created due to the fairy spring, and that the closer one was to the fairy spring, the thicker the scent of nature would be. That meant that the fairy realm grew around the fairy fountain, meaning that the fairy fountain was in the middle of the fairy realm. As soon as Ling Chen moved, Greenwood also moved in response. Although Ling Chen's overall strength was comparatively quite weak, he had powerful items. Last time, he had used an item that had an AoE stun, giving him the opportunity to escape into the lunar sky hell. This time, they wouldn't make the same mistake. The 10 elders also moved into action. Anyone could see that this weak human actually wanted to force his way into the fairy realm's most sacred place. He was definitely carried away by his wishful thinking, and greatly overestimated himself. But, was it really just wishful thinking, and that he had overestimated himself? The current Ling Chen was the same level as the last time he had come, but there was a significant difference, and that was that he had joined the Fengchen sect. The Fengchen sect's greatest strengths were in its Fengchen curses, as well as running away. In that moment, pressure from countless fairies locked onto Ling Chen's body, almost crushing him. Tens of streams of fairy energy also shot over from different directions. They didn't contain any attack power though, evidently, they didn't want to hurt Ling Chen. However, if any of them touched him, he would lose his ability to move. Broken shadow. As if a gale had caught onto his body, his entire body became incredibly light, and he charged towards his destination. Whoosh! All of the pressure and fairy energy that had been locked onto Ling Chen was left far behind by him. The fairies all heard the roar of a gale, and all that was left of Ling Chen was an afterimage. Greenwood, the 10 elders and all the other fairies present all stared in shock. By the time they realized what had happened, Ling Chen had already disappeared from their sight. They had never seen this sort of speed before, in fact, they had never even heard of such a speed before. Hurry! Go to the fairy fountain. Greenwood was finally able to react, and his eyes widened as he yelled out. His yell traveled a long way, and covered almost the entire fairy realm, causing every fairy to hear it. The direction Ling Chen had left in was precisely the direction that the fairy fountain was in. It was not very far to the fairy fountain, and at the monstrous speed he was traveling, it would take less than half a minute for him to arrive. Moreover, because of the bewildering formation, the fairy clan had never worried about outsiders entering, and so they had never prepared any defenses for the fairy fountain. If that human really did put his little sister in, then they would be finished. Swish 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 swish. Light flashed, and Greenwood and the 10 elders all disappeared. Within the fairy realm, they could borrow nature's power to manipulate space, and use teleportation. After teleporting a few times, they reached the fairy fountain and waited for Ling Chen's arrival with darkened expressions. With Ling Chen's speed, it was impossible for them to chase after him. As such, they decided to wait for him at the fairy fountain to stop him. All of the other fairies also flocked towards the fairy fountain. No matter what, even if the entire fairy clan ends up hating me, I must put Ruoruo into the fairy fountain. I'll take whatever consequences are thrown at me. There's nothing more important than Ruoruo being revived. Be careful of the items he throws out. Greenwood cautioned. Approximately 10 meters behind him was the fairy fountain. A green glow appeared in his hands. They had to take Ling Chen down before he reached the fairy fountain, no matter what. Understood. The head elder replied. Last time, they had personally experienced how powerful his items were. They wouldn't fall for the same thing again. If Ling Chen used that same AoE stun item, they were confident that they would be able to seal it before it could activate. Ling Chen's speed was simply monstrous. By the time they had said a few sentences, Ling Chen had already appeared in their field of vision, and closed in on them at a terrifying speed. Currently, Ling Chen could only activate Broken Shadow for 20 seconds at a time, and could only use it 3 times per day. However, this 60 seconds was more than enough. Restrict him? No, forget it, kill him immediately. Ling Chen's determination to defile their holiest place finally enraged all of the fairies. Greenwood and the 10 elders attacked simultaneously. Immediately, 1, 10, then thousands of light green elemental arrows appeared in front of them, and shot out like a sea of arrows. In the instant the fairies saw Ling Chen, he also saw them. He looked past them, and saw the glimmer of water. It was a fairly small fountain, and the light that reflected off it was pure and warm. When he came closer to it, he noticed that the air became clearer and more refreshing, causing his vision, hearing and consciousness to become more focused. That's the fairy fountain. Chi Yu yelled. Even without Chi Yu's yell, Ling Chen knew that this was definitely the fairy fountain. In front of him, countless elemental arrows rained down towards him. Greenwood was mysterious god grade, and the 10 elders were all definitely at least heaven's end grade. To be able to defeat the demon beast clan back then, the fairy clan was definitely quite powerful. A single arrow would be able to instantly kill Ling Chen. Moreover, the range of these arrows was terrifying. Although they were shot from over 200 meters away, it looked as if they definitely were able to hit him. Fairies were all natural-born archers, this was something known by everyone in the Forgotten Continent. However, how could Ling Chen allow himself to die? As Ling Chen continued to run, he sidestepped to the left and right continuously. To the fairies, it looked as if there were 100 Ling Chens approaching at once, causing all of the fairies' eyes to widen. The countless elemental arrows rained down onto Ling Chen, piercing through his afterimages. Because Ling Chen was far too fast and agile, even these mysterious god and heaven's end grade fairies couldn't tell which was the real Ling Chen and which ones were the afterimages. They saw many of their arrows chaotically crashing into each other, or passing through an afterimage. Ling Chen, who continued to charge at them, and was now only 100 meters away. What? Greenwood and the 10 elders were flabbergasted. Last time, they hadn't been able to stop Ling Chen because of his powerful items. To them, attacking a weak LV-20 human was like an elephant stepping on an ant, and would not take any effort. Moreover, they had all attacked simultaneously with their elemental arrows. Not only did fairies have incredible range, but the speed of their arrows was also incredibly fast. They had shot so many arrows so densely, and yet he was still completely fine. They simply couldn't believe their eyes. Greenwood's face darkened. With Ling Chen's strength, he wasn't able to cause any threat to their lives. However, with that sort of speed, if he was allowed to come close, they wouldn't be able to stop him. If he really put his little sister into the fairy fountain, everything would be over. Greenwood stretched out his hand, and a jade green bow appeared. The bow was incredibly large, with the bowstring at 2 meters in length. It was even taller than Greenwood himself. When the bow appeared, all of the fairies stopped moving, and stared at the bow, their eyes filled with reverence. It was as if they were looking at a divine being. They knew that for Greenwood to summon this bow, he had truly become furious, and was determined to destroy this human. The appearance of the bow also sealed this human's fate. The other fairies didn't even need to attack anymore. To do so would be blasphemous to the bow. The massive bow hovered in front of Greenwood. His hands didn't touch the bow, but as he made the motion of drawing a bow, the massive bowstring began to be slowly pulled back. A glittering jade green elemental arrow was quickly formed on the bowstring, pointing towards Ling Chen. All of the fairies held their breath, because the appearance of this arrow caused all of the surrounding air and energy to be sucked into it. The arrow grew longer and longer, thicker and thicker, and the color of the arrow became deeper as well. The name of this arrow was Endless Jade. Within the same class of attacks, its destructive power was strong, but not extremely strong. Its strength was in its lightning-fast speed, as well as the fact that it would not stop chasing its target, even if it had to chase him or her to the ends of the world. This sort of arrow, shot by this sort of bow, against a LV-20 human was simply ridiculous. However, Ling Chen had powerful items that could cause AoE stuns, and was able to escape unscathed from their combined attack. This caused Greenwood to take out his trump card. The fairy fountain was simply too important, and they couldn't take any risks. A white figure appeared next to the fairy fountain, and seeing that jade green light, her face fell and she couldn't help but yell out, "Father, no!" Whoosh! As soon as the endless jade was shot out, it was as if the space around it was like a thin piece of paper that was ripped apart, causing all of the fairies to shudder. The giant bow vanished, and Greenwood looked towards the jade green arrow as he sighed inside his heart, "Forgive me, Ling Chen. For the fairy fountain, I have no other choice. Your speed and agility have exceeded my expectations, so I have no other option but to kill you with a single strike." When the endless jade arrow was being formed, Ling Chen's gaze fell on it coldly. The instant it was shot out at him, the feeling of death surged inside of him, causing the hair on his body to stand on end. The dot of green that was speeding towards him was like a jade-green fang that was about to pierce his body. At this moment, he was less than 50 meters away from Greenwood and the others. Let alone 50 meters, even at 20 meters, he would have the confidence to dodge normal arrows. However, this was certainly not a normal arrow. This ray of green light was many times faster than even the fastest bullet in the human world. Immediately, Ling Chen knew that he wouldn't be able to dodge it. Bang! Under the gaze of all of the fairies, the endless jade arrow smashed into Ling Chen's chest. The green light exploded, covering Ling Chen's body. Endless jade had never been dodged or escaped by any person before. Even if Ling Chen was able to dodge its initial onslaught, it would be impossible for him to dodge it forever. Seeing the green light explode, all of the fairies lapsed into silence. Ing Shua bit her lips, and closed her eyes. She knew that Ling Chen was definitely dead. Last time, because of her, the fairy clan had forced him into the lunar sky hell. This time, the fairy clan had personally killed him. This man who had taken away her first wings had caused conflict in the fairy clan again and again, which was something she couldn't understand. However, at that moment, the fairies seemed to hear a furious roar. Within the green light surrounding Ling Chen's body, they could faintly see two blood-red dots. Whoosh! The air was once again torn, and the green glow that had just disappeared once again shot out. However, this time, it was shooting towards the fairies. The fairies all looked on with fear and dismay as the arrow, releasing boundless pressure, streaked towards Greenwood. Bang! No one could dodge endless jade, and that included Fairy Chief Greenwood. The endless jade arrow that had hit Ling Chen now shot into Greenwood's body, and exploded into green light. Greenwood gasped, and his body was blasted away by the nature energy that the arrow contained. His closeness with nature meant that he wouldn't be hurt by the endless jade arrow, but that didn't mean he could fully stop the momentum that it carried. In fact, not only Greenwood, but even the 10 elders gathered around him were blasted back by 100 meters. They were now no longer in front of the fairy fountain, but behind it. Ling Chen, who they were confident was dead, once again appeared in their field of vision. However, his face was now covered by a golden glow, with many spikes extending out of it, the evil god's mask. The endless jade arrow shot out by Greenwood was meant to instantly kill Ling Chen. However, he didn't know about the evil god's mask in Ling Chen's possession. With the evil god's mask, all attacks that could instantly kill Ling Chen were useless, and would even be reflected back to the attacker. There were not many fairies who could use nature's power to teleport, and as such there was a large gap in the circle left by Greenwood and the 10 elders. Ling Chen sped towards that gap. With his speed, no one would be able to stop him. If Greenwood hadn't shot out the endless jade arrow, and had just used the large numbers of plants to form a barricade, it would have been virtually impossible for Ling Chen to make it. However, the endless jade had not only not affected Ling Chen, but gave him a chance to break through. lock down the fairy fountain. After being blasted back, Greenwood did not panic. He yelled out, and green light began to shine from his and the 10 elders' bodies. Instantly, countless thick vines sprang up from around the fairy fountain, rapidly growing towards a point in the air directly above the fairy fountain. Evidently, they wanted to use these vines to completely seal it off. That way, even if Ling Chen was able to come close, he wouldn't be able to do anything to the fairy fountain. However, this method had a large drawback, and that was that all of the energy and life force from the fairy fountain would also be sealed, which would affect all of the plants and creatures in the entire fairy realm. However, they simply had no other choice. In all these years, they never had to completely seal off the fairy fountain before. They never thought that such a weak human would be able to force them to such an extent. While Greenwood and the 10 elders were locking down the fairy fountain, the other fairies were also kept busy as well. They worked together, causing many large vines to burst out about 10 meters in front of the fairy fountain, wanting to stop Ling Chen. Seeing that the fairy fountain was quickly being sealed, Ling Chen's eyes flashed in urgency. He hurriedly yelled out, "Ling Er, help me. If you help, I'll give you 5, no, 10 new dolls." Ling Er was now much closer to Ling Chen, but was still not at the point where she would follow every order from him. Although she would occasionally help Ling Chen out when she felt like it, she wasn't like Xiao Hui, who would unconditionally obey him. The only way to mobilize her was to bribe her with dolls. Ling Er had never been able to resist the temptation of dolls. Under the offer of 10 dolls, Ling Er's eyes lit up, and she immediately nodded. She stretched out her 2 arms, and her eyes flashed with a black light. Darkness Lock was activated, and illusory chains passed through the wall of vines, and wrapped around the nearest fairies, locking their active skills. All of Ling Er's skills forced a certain condition onto the target. Evidently, even these fairies were not strong enough to resist Ling Er's skills. The fairies who were focusing on making the vines grow as quickly as possible suddenly shuddered, and an expression of surprise surfaced on their faces. The nature energy that they could easily control suddenly fell dormant, and couldn't be controlled by them. The vines, having lost the energy that was controlling and nourishing them, quickly withered. Gaps began to appear in the originally dense wall of vines. Ling Chen burst through one of the gaps, flashing past the fairies, with wind howling behind him. With broken shadow, let alone block him, the fairies weren't able to even react in time. Stop him. All of the fairies looked on with fear. Ling Chen's current speed was one that could ignore almost everything. Fairies were naturally much more powerful than humans. As soon as a fairy was born, they would be stronger than a human who had cultivated for more than 10 or so years. Within the fairy clan, any little kid would have been able to defeat Ling Chen in a direct confrontation. And yet, Ling Chen was able to throw the entire fairy clan into complete chaos. This was all because of his skill, Broken Shadow. No matter how strong one was, or how powerful their abilities were, what was the point if they couldn't even keep up with their opponent? Back when Xiao Fengchen was trying to convince Ling Chen to join the Fengchen sect, he had explained this very clearly. All of the human experts who were put into the lunar sky hell were much more powerful than he was, but only he was still alive. Why was that? It was because when he ran, none of the demons or beasts could touch a single hair on his head. So what if those experts were all incredibly strong? Without sufficient speed, all of that was completely useless. After joining the Fengchen sect, Ling Chen only received one skill for running away, which was Broken Shadow. He could only use it for 60 seconds per day, but these 60 seconds were more than enough to throw the entire fairy clan into chaos. Ling Chen had to admit, although the Fengchen sect didn't have any powerful attack skills, but the skills they had were all astonishingly brutal and effective. The fairy fountain was right in front of him, and Broken Shadow's effects were still active. Stopping him was already impossible. The vines densely covered the fairy fountain, creating an impenetrable cage. The only region that remained unblocked was the top of the cage, which was gradually becoming smaller and smaller. If even that small space was blocked, it would be impossible for him to reach the fairy fountain, but it seemed that he could make it. Ling Chen deeply breathed in, and leapt upwards. With his extreme speed, he was able to jump incredibly far and high. While in the air, he felt 10 or so pressures locking onto him. He didn't bother to turn around as he coldly harumphed, activating the lunar scourge's moon flare. Whoosh! A blinding light pierced into all the fairies' eyes like a sharp sword, causing them to cry out in pain. The pressures that locked onto him disappeared. It was simply impossible to resist the light from moon flare. With moon flare, everyone's vision, except Ling Chen's, was rendered useless. As soon as the white light began to appear, Greenwood could feel that something was amiss. Last time, it was also this blinding white light that had allowed Ling Chen to escape. He tightly closed his eyes, and the green glow around him remained just as strong. He mustered all of his strength, trying to close that final gap in the cage. Taking advantage of the chaos and confusion, Ling Chen sped along the vines, charging towards the last gap. By now, every other place had been completely and utterly sealed, only the 2-meter-wide gap at the very top was still closing up. In another 2 seconds, not even a bit of light would be able to enter. Through the gap, he saw the still fountain. The water was so clear that even from that distance, he was able to clearly see the bottom. The fountain simply emanated purity and holiness. This was the fairy fountain. Ling Chen didn't have any time to marvel at it. Just as the effects of moon flare were ending, it was replaced with a dark silver flash of light. Moon shadow. Immediately, the vines stopped, frozen in place. The fairies finally regained their vision. Looking up, they saw Ling Chen standing high in the air, on top of the vines, with a large gap in front of him. Greenwood's face fell, as he found that no matter how hard he tried, the vines at the top couldn't budge at all. This caused him to become utterly shocked. Ling Chen's power definitely couldn't overcome his control of nature energy. Moreover, he felt that his connection with nature hadn't been affected, but those vines at the top had been restricted by something, and even his power wasn't able to overcome it. What was this power? Greenwood quickly calmed down, and stopped trying to make those vines grow. 10 or so elemental arrows instantly formed in front of him as he shouted, "Quickly stop him." As he yelled out, the elemental arrows shot out towards Ling Chen. The other fairies also moved into action, and started to shoot their own arrows towards him. In an instant, countless arrows swept towards Ling Chen. The 10 elders disappeared, and teleported near Ling Chen, preparing to destroy him in one blow. However, a strange scene met their eyes. Countless elemental arrows shot at Ling Chen from every direction. Unless Ling Chen could fly, it would be impossible for him to dodge. However, when the elemental arrows came close to Ling Chen, they all stopped. They didn't vanish or fall down, but rather froze in place. Very soon, what they saw was a cage of vines, with a smaller cage of arrows above it. Furthermore, the 10 elders who teleported close to Ling Chen weren't able to move either. They were unable to budge, and even their eyes stared unblinkingly. It was as if time had paused for them. Only shock and terror could be seen in their eyes. The fairies all stopped attacking, and watched with wide eyes, unsure of what to do. Within Ling Chen's arms, a beautiful girl had appeared. Although she seemed to be in a deep sleep, she looked dazzling and pure. As Ling Chen gently held her, his mind became chaotic, and repeatedly replayed her last words, "I'm sorry." Indeed, Shui Ruo's body had somehow appeared in this virtual world. However, by now, Ling Chen didn't feel any shock. 7 days. It was the first time they had been apart for so long. After today, perhaps they would be apart for much longer. He couldn't bear to part with her, and wanted to hug her forever. However, he knew that he couldn't allow himself to do that. That short embrace contained boundless, endless longing. Ling Chen buried the grief and sorrow inside of him as he softly said, "Ruo Ruo, sleep well. Sleep, until I wake you up." Ling Chen closed his eyes, and gently let go. Ling Shui Ruo's body gently floated down like a feather towards the fairy fountain. The fairies all stared in horror, but there was nothing they could do. All of their elemental arrows had stopped short of their target, and even the 10 elders were unable to move an inch. Under the effects of moon shadow, apart from Ling Chen and things that he allowed to move, there was nothing that could escape its bindings. Splash! The sound of Shui Ruo's body entering the water traveled into every fairy's ears, causing their hearts to plummet. However, what's done was done. There was no way to reverse what had just happened. This was the first time an outsider had ever come into contact with the fairy fountain, and had even completely submerged within it. The fairies were all completely furious. As the most peaceful and kind clan, they rarely became furious. What Ling Chen had done had pushed them too far. Ling Tian, you, Greenwood's face was unsightly, and flames of anger burned in his eyes. His fists were gripped so tightly together that blood almost started to flow from them. What he, and the rest of the fairy clan, feared most, had just happened right in front of his eyes. He felt as if he had been struck by lightning, and suddenly felt incredibly dizzy. Boundless fury erupted inside his chest, and he was so overwhelmed by anger that he could only point at Ling Chen. He wanted to order this human killed, but even if they killed him, they wouldn't be able to change the fact that their fairy fountain was now contaminated. Even if they killed him 1,000 times, nothing would change, and their anger still wouldn't have dissipated. "Are you happy now, Ling Tian? Do you know what you've done?" Greenwood vehemently spat out as his body trembled. As the fairy chief, he didn't want to fight or kill, but he now felt killing intent welling up inside of him. "I know what I've done. However, I will compensate your fairy clan for this." Ling Chen matter-of-factly replied. "Compensation?" Greenwood coldly laughed. "The fairy fountain is the foundation of our fairy clan. As soon as the fairy fountain was contaminated, our clan was doomed. This was what our greatest ancestor told us. And yet, you, Ling Chen looked around at the fairies. All of them were giving him murderous looks, filled with boundless hatred. As soon as Greenwood gave the order, they would do all they could to destroy him. Ling Chen continued to calmly reply, "Is the fate of your fairy clan really dependent on a fountain? Before today, your fairy fountain had never been touched by an outsider before, and yet your clan is declining to such an extent. With your low fertility rate, as well as being sealed from the outside world, even if the fairy fountain was 10 times as big, or 100 times as pure, you would still be in decline. In not too long, your fairy clan will dwindle down to just a few fairies, and may even go extinct. I'm sure you're even more clear than me about this." Greenwood frowned, and gnashed his teeth, but could not rebut what Ling Chen had said. The fairies who were listening were also speechless. They all knew the current condition of the fairy clan, but no one wanted to talk about it. Ling Chen's words had ripped open a wound that they wanted untouched, and the fairies' faces all darkened. "I can't deny what you said. However, our fairy clan was born from nature, and is extremely close with nature. I don't believe that our clan will ever go extinct. You, a human, don't need to worry about these things." Greenwood's tone was devoid of the courtesy he had previously shown. If he wasn't doing his best to suppress his anger, he would have gone up and ripped Ling Chen to shreds long ago. He continued, "You committed the gravest crime possible against our clan. No matter who you are, we simply can't forgive you. The person you put inside the fairy fountain must disappear immediately." Greenwood charged forwards as he yelled, as did the 10 elders. How could they possibly allow a human to remain within the fairy fountain? "Don't you dare!" Ling Chen's calm voice immediately became murderous, causing Greenwood and the 10 elders to instantly stop, their bodies stiff. They felt an incredibly cold pressure covering their bodies, causing them to freeze, killing intent. This was an incredibly overwhelming wave of killing intent. They looked up at Ling Chen, who had not moved an inch. Ling Chen's eyes and expression had completely changed. His eyes were completely dead, and unmoving. Being stared at by these eyes, even many of the Heaven's End grade fairies couldn't help but shiver. All the fairies were born in the fairy realm. They didn't have any predators, or any other races to go to war against. Killing intent was something that many of them had never experienced before. This suffocating and icy pressure caused them to understand what killing intent really was. This wave of killing intent was so large that they simply couldn't fathom how releasing such amount was possible. The one releasing this killing intent was actually a LV-20 human. They couldn't understand how a weak human like this could make them feel so much fear. Humph. Greenwood coldly harumphed as he released his own pressure, reducing Ling Chen's killing intent by half. However, his shock was still visible within his eyes. He did not retreat, and stared into Ling Chen's dark and cold eyes, saying, "You think that you can stop us? No matter how impressive your aura is, you won't be able to withstand a single blow from us." "I know I can't stop you." Ling Chen's body and eyes were unmoving. Only his lips moved, as he released more killing intent, causing the airflow to become chaotic. "But if you dare to touch my little sister, and she loses the last bit of hope she has in reviving, I will cause your beloved fairy fountain to become the dirtiest marsh in the entire world. You can kill me, but in this world, I can revive as many times as I want. Moreover, your bewildering formation is completely useless against me. I can come in as I wish. Today, I was able to put my little sister in. Next time, I can do the same thing and put other things in, and can continue to do this for as long as I want. If you kill me 100 times, I'll revive 100 times and pollute your fairy fountain 100 times. Try touching my little sister's body, and we'll see whether I dare to do this or not." "You." Greenwood pointed his finger towards Ling Chen, his face ashen. However, he didn't dare to go any closer. They had all personally seen Ling Chen's terrifying speed and his strange abilities. Today, even with Greenwood and the 10 elders present, they had been unable to prevent Ling Chen from putting a person into the fairy fountain. They didn't want to admit it, but it was completely possible for Ling Chen to do the same thing again. Moreover, as a player, he could revive limitlessly and harass them limitlessly. Thinking about this, Greenwood gnashed his teeth and frowned. But, how could Greenwood and the other fairies back down? What Ling Chen had done was simply unforgivable. "Alright, settle down. Since things have become like this, threatening each other won't help resolve the issue. Everyone calm down." An elderly voice slowly spoke, and hearing this voice, much of the fairies' fury dissipated. Looks of respect appeared on their faces and even Greenwood became much calmer. They turned to look at Granny Witherwood, who had appeared without any of them noticing. "Mother, we were useless and couldn't stop these humans from contaminating the fairy fountain. We'll let Mother decide what to do from here." Greenwood said while sighing. The fairy realm had existed in peace for thousands of years, and today was the biggest thing that had ever happened. Greenwood was incredibly furious, but didn't know what to do. "Since this has happened already, just let it go. Everyone go back to your homes," Granny Witherwood said. Her words caused all of the fairies, who were planning to beat up Ling Chen, to stare at her in shock. "Let it go? How can we just let it go? Because of his selfishness, he contaminated the entire fairy fountain. This is unforgivable. The fairy fountain is the foundation of our fairy clan." Greenwood couldn't stop himself from yelling out. Granny Witherwood was the only authority higher than him in the fairy clan, and even he would follow her orders. However, he was simply unable to understand why she would tell them to let it go. Granny Witherwood looked up, her eyes calm and wise, for his loved one, Ling Tian was willing to go against our entire clan with his bit of strength. Although what he did was extreme, and nearly caused a catastrophe, but his spirit is admirable. Moreover, you don't need to worry, the fairy fountain's water has not been contaminated. Can't you feel there's something familiar about that girl's aura? The fairy fountain hasn't been contaminated? Mother, do you mean? Greenwood was dumbfounded. They had all watched as Ling Chen put the human girl in the fairy fountain. However, because of their rage, they hadn't paid attention to that girl's aura. Granny Witherwood didn't reply. Her hunched figure slightly straightened up, and she waved the walking stick in her hand. Immediately, a jade green light shot down from the sky, covering all of the fairies around the fairy fountain, as well as Ling Chen. After the light disappeared, they found that they had moved to the edge of the fairy fountain, and the cage of vines had disappeared. The water in the fairy fountain was so still and transparent that it was almost as if it wasn't there. Everyone could clearly see every inch of the fountain. In the middle of the fairy fountain was a human girl, who looked as beautiful as a fairy. She looked like she was sleeping extremely peacefully, but there was not a bit of life within her. Seeing her up close, all the fairies suddenly felt a desire to protect her, as well as a sense of pain within their hearts, like they were being stabbed by needles. Around her body, there was a white glow of purity, which also contained a hint of light green. Seeing the aura around her, Greenwood and the 10 elders were completely flabbergasted. Even Ling Chen was shocked. What's going on? Why is there light coming from Ruo's body? This feeling, could it be, all of the fairies were staring at the girl in the fairy fountain. The light around her body was very similar to the nature's light on their own bodies, but it was somewhat different. However, what they felt from this light was true fairy energy. What's more, it seemed to be even purer than theirs. Although this aura was quite weak, but its purity and warmness resonated with their own. The fairies all valued peace, and sought the purest of energy. Their fairy energy was the purest in the entire world. However, they couldn't understand how their energy had appeared on a human, as well as how it could possibly be even purer than theirs. Moreover, the aura the girl radiated even contained a bit of holiness. It seems that most of you have realized. Granny Witherwood's voice broke the silence. She looked at the girl in the fairy fountain, her ancient eyes filled with reminiscence. That is our fairy energy. In fact, it's the holiest type of fairy energy that disappeared a long time ago. This sort of fairy energy barely contains any attack power, such that it is unable to even use the fairy arrows or control plants. Instead, every bit of the energy is used to help and protect other people. In our clan, this is the holiest, purest and most selfless form of fairy energy. But didn't the holy fairy energy disappear in the ancient times? Moreover, this girl is evidently a human. How can a human possess our fairy energy? Greenwood asked in shock. Every other fairy had these questions in their minds as well. Disappear? Indeed, it did disappear. If it wasn't for this girl, I also would have believed that the holiest fairy energy had been lost forever. However, it seems that the Blue Sky Queen found some way to pass on her power and energy. Upon mentioning the name Blue Sky Queen, Granny Witherwood slightly stood up straighter, as a form of respect towards her. Back then, our ancestors lost faith in humanity, and declared that all fairies would return to the fairy realm forever. Our ancestors couldn't stand the dirtiness of the outside world, as well as the betrayals, lies and greed of humans. Almost all of our ancestors agreed, but there were a few who opposed this. At that time, the fairy clan had 3 fairy kings and queens. The one who was in strongest opposition to this decision was the only fairy queen, the warm-hearted and respected Blue Sky Queen. She was the only fairy with the holy fairy energy. However, the overwhelming majority of fairies were in support of the decision. Many of them believed that if they continued to stay in the outside world, their energy would start to become impure, and they would no longer be fairies. Moreover, with how greedy the humans were, it was difficult to say when they would try to take over the fairy clan. In the end, our ancestors all returned to the fairy realm, and created the bewildering formation, as well as sealed off the fairy realm. There was only one fairy who did not return to the fairy realm, and that was the Blue Sky Queen. The normally mild and warm Blue Sky Queen became incredibly obstinate, and left the fairy clan. At that time, our ancestors didn't understand why she would be so stubborn, but looking back, Blue Sky Queen was the truly wise one. Our ancestors made that decision in the best interests of our clan, but after thousands of years, we've fallen into a hopeless cycle of decline. The fairies all listened silently. They knew what Granny Witherwood said was true, the fairy clan was indeed in a hopeless cycle of decline. Although the nature energy here was abundant, and they had no enemies or wars, there were only 2,000 fairies left. This was a chilling number. Furthermore, this number would gradually decrease more and more over time. It was entirely possible for the fairy clan to one day disappear from the forgotten continent. Could it be that the holy fairy energy on that girl is from the Blue Sky Queen? Greenwood asked. After all, Granny Witherwood had just said that the Blue Sky Queen was the only one who possessed the holy fairy energy. Indeed, there's no other explanation. Granny Witherwood said as she continued to talk, I'm sure the Blue Sky Queen didn't want her holy fairy energy to disappear. However, at that time, she was in the outside world by herself, so she couldn't find a fairy to pass it on to. She must have used some sort of secret method to pass her power on to humans, so that humans could pass it down to their descendants. The human who inherits her power will have their body purified, and will become as pure as us fairies. This is evidenced by the light and aura from that girl's body. Although she is a human, she inherited the holy fairy energy, so not only is she free of impurity, but her purity exceeds even ours. She won't contaminate the fairy fountain at all. Ling Chen silently listened as his questions were answered. Shui Ruo's profession was the fairy priest, and was obtained by him for her from the Hall of Heroic Spirits. This profession didn't have any attack skills, but its healing and support skills were far superior to those of normal priests. Although Shui Ruo could only use the basic skills of this profession back then, she became a key player in their group. When training together, she was the support for all of the other girls. It seemed that the fairy priest profession really did come from the fairy queen, Blue Sky Queen. She most likely put her power into a scroll before she died, so that it could find a suitable successor. Eventually, it ended up at the Hall of Heroic Spirits, and was obtained by Ling Chen for Shui Ruo, thus allowing the holy fairy energy to come into the world again. No wonder the description contained, if a person with this profession enters the fairy clan they will have the goodwill and trust of the fairies. Back when Ling Chen had obtained the hidden profession scroll, he didn't know any of this. At this moment, in his heart, he sighed in relief. He had never thought that this profession would become so important. Now, the fury from the fairies would be reduced by at least half, and it would be much easier to take care of the rest. The holy fairy energy has reappeared, and come back to the fairy realm. Although it's on the body of a dead girl, but it still came back. Perhaps this is the heaven's will. Granny Witherwood said, that energy belonged to the Blue Sky Queen, so perhaps it contains a bit of her spirit. By letting the girl sleep in the fairy fountain, this last bit of holy fairy energy will not be lost. Hearing that the fairy fountain had not been contaminated, the fairies all let out a breath of relief. The fury and fear in their hearts also quickly disappeared. Greenwood thought for a moment, before looking at Ling Chen and frowning, so it's like that. However, that girl is a human. Many ancestors were not qualified to be placed into the fairy fountain, despite all of their contributions to the clan. To give this glory to a human girl who is unrelated to us, this is sacrilegious to all of our ancestors. Although she inherited the power of the Blue Sky Queen, in the end, she's not the Blue Sky Queen herself. This reason is not sufficient. Granny Witherwood fell silent. What Greenwood said was the truth. Only fairies who had made significant contributions to the fairy clan had the right to be placed into the fairy fountain upon their death. After all these years, there were only 6 fairies who had earned this glory. If they let this human girl stay in the fairy fountain, practically every fairy would have this right. This sort of precedent couldn't be allowed, otherwise all order in the fairy clan would be disrupted. You want a reason? Alright, I'll give you a reason. Ling Chen coldly said. Immediately, all eyes fell on Ling Chen. Greenwood looked over and said, You? Alright, what sort of reason can you provide? I'll destroy the fairy clan's barrier, allowing your fairy clan to rejoin the outside world. Is that reason sufficient? Ling Chen calmly said. His words were uttered in a steady voice, but they resounded like thunder in all the fairies' ears. Whoosh! The fairies all fell completely silent, and every fairy had a look of disbelief on their faces. Destroy the fairy clan's barrier, allowing your fairy clan to rejoin the outside world. Ling Chen had said this so casually, but how could it be so simple? If this barrier was really gone, the fairy clan would be able to escape their impending doom. It would be equivalent to saving the entire fairy clan. Equivalent to saving all of these fairies, as well as their descendants. This was something that they had dreamed and longed for, but knew was impossible. Greenwood's body trembled, and his eyes widened. Even the extremely calm Granny Witherwood couldn't help but gasp. However, immediately, Greenwood's expression returned to normal. He looked at Ling Chen deeply as he said in a low voice, If you can really destroy the barrier, then let alone allowing the human girl reside in the fairy fountain, we'll even give you another 10 requests. However, Greenwood stretched out his right hand and pointed to the sky. You should know what sort of barrier this is. Back then, our ancestors asked the magnificent moon goddess, Order, to create it, and it was reinforced by more than 300 of our ancestors. It is incredibly tough, and even the moon goddesses wouldn't be able to destroy it. In the past, countless ancestors tried to destroy it, but failed. Even with the combined efforts of 10,000 fairies, it would be impossible to even create a hole. Our fairy clan does not specialize in attacking and destroying, but I am able to destroy mountains with my power. However, even my power is vastly insufficient to even scratch the barrier. You, a weak human, saying such words is simply delirious ramblings. Greenwood's lips curved to form a smile that didn't quite look like a smile. His eyes shone with the phrase, You're too naive, as he replied in a serious tone, This barrier has sealed my fairy clan for thousands of years. At first, it was simply a protective barrier, but now, it has become a nightmare. All these years, as our fairy clan's numbers dwindled, we felt more and more danger from it. In order to protect the younger fairies, we tell them that this is a protective barrier that separates us from the dirty outside world. That way, their desire to go outside is also reduced. After they've matured, every fairy wishes that this barrier would disappear. If there is someone who can destroy this barrier, they will be the savior and benefactor of my entire clan. Let alone sleep in the fairy fountain. If that person is pure-hearted and kind, we can even gift the fairy fountain to him or her. As Greenwood spoke, a look of desire and longing appeared on every fairy's face. The fairies that were present were all the most powerful fairies of the clan, and were all clear about the peril that the fairy clan faced. However, despite knowing this, there was nothing that they could do. They could only look at the barrier every day and sigh. Alright, Ling Chen slowly nodded, if I really can do it, I only request that you allow my little sister to stay in the fairy fountain, and no one is allowed to disturb her. Fairy Chief Greenwood, Granny Witherwood. I know you definitely don't believe me, but please come with me. After speaking, Ling Chen walked towards his right. That was the direction in which the closest part of the barrier was. Ling Chen's confidence surprised Greenwood and Granny Witherwood, and complex emotions flashed within their eyes. They were unable to believe that a human could destroy the barrier that countless generations of fairies hadn't been able to destroy. However, seeing Ling Chen's back, they could feel their hearts racing. Let's have a look. Even if there isn't much hope, we have nothing to lose by letting him try. After all, there's only one outcome waiting for us if this continues. Before we come back, no one is allowed to touch that girl. After speaking in her ancient voice, Granny Witherwood followed behind Ling Chen. Greenwood frowned, and also ordered, "All right, go and do what you will. Without my permission, no one is to do anything to the girl in the fairy fountain. Afterwards, we'll try to reach an agreement with him." After speaking, his body flashed, and appeared next to Ling Chen. 30 minutes later. After passing through a large garden of flowers as well as an empty piece of land, Ling Chen saw distortions in the air in front of him. He slowed down, stretched out his hand and felt an invisible wall. They had finally reached the barrier. Greenwood and Granny Witherwood stopped behind Ling Chen. This entire time, neither they nor Ling Chen had spoken a single word. In front of them was the transparent barrier that had sealed the fairy clan for thousands of years. Greenwood and Granny Witherwood were both incredibly familiar with this barrier. Granny Witherwood tapped the ground with her walking stick as she asked, "Young man, how are you going to destroy the barrier? At least, with your current strength, it's impossible for you to damage the barrier." Ling Chen took a few steps back, and asked, "Fairy Chief Greenwood, in the past, when you fairies tried to destroy the barrier, you used your fairy energy, right?" "That's right." Greenwood nodded, feeling that Ling Chen had asked a stupid question. Without using their fairy energy, could they have tried to blow it away with their mouths? Ling Chen thought for a few moments before asking, "Fairy Chief Greenwood, can you please use your fairy energy to attack this barrier?" "Of course, but don't feel disappointed." Greenwood didn't refuse. He calmly swept his gaze over Ling Chen as a white glow flashed on his body, and a thick white-colored elemental arrow soundlessly appeared in front of him. The fairy clan did not specialize in attacking, and using fairy arrows was their main form of attacking. All fairy arrows contained a bit of the holy element, which was effective against demonic creatures. With Greenwood's strength, casting elemental arrows didn't require the use of a bow. This simple elemental arrow contained enough power to pierce through a mountain. Whoosh! The elemental arrow was shot out, and was surrounded by an extremely berserk airflow, pushing Ling Chen back by many meters. The elemental arrow smashed into the transparent barrier, and fragmented into motes of starlight like a fragile ice shard. The space in front of them was exactly the same, that attack had no effect at all. Greenwood turned and looked at Ling Chen, who had been pushed away by the elemental arrow, as he said flatly, "My attacks are useless." Ling Chen could tell what Greenwood was subtly saying. "My attacks are useless, so you trying will be pointless." The airflow from Greenwood's attack made it evident that the attack was incredibly powerful. However, just like Greenwood said, it was useless. Ling Chen ignored Greenwood's words. He walked up to the barrier, and stretched out his hand, confirming where it was. His hands flashed with light as the Zephyr Blade and the Great Ravager appeared in his hands. He raised up both weapons as he said, "Let me try this time." "As you wish." Greenwood expressionlessly replied. He looked forwards, away from where Ling Chen was, as if he didn't even bother to watch. Granny Witherwood sighed. She could clearly see Ling Chen's strength. If Ling Chen's plan to destroy the barrier was relying on himself, there would be no hope at all. Ling Tian / Ling Chen stared in front of him, with the Zephyr Blade in his left hand and the Great Ravager in his right. Two Ling Tian slashes viciously smashed towards the invisible shield. Both Greenwood and Granny Witherwood looked over, their eyes filled with shock. They were surprised that a LV-20 human could release such a powerful attack, as well as that his left and right hands were equipped with completely different weapons. Bang! The Zephyr Blade and Great Ravager heavily crashed onto the barrier. However, the attacks didn't dissipate like Greenwood's elemental arrow, what resulted was a massive colliding sound. This sound caused Greenwood and Granny Witherwood to suddenly turn around, and their pupils contracted. Two red damage figures floated up from the area where the two weapons had hit the barrier, -42284190. This, Greenwood, who had carried no hopes in Ling Chen being able to damage the barrier at all, gaped with his mouth wide open. Shock and dismay were written all over his face. His eyes trembled, and he was unable to believe what he saw. Even Granny Witherwood couldn't contain the emotions in her voice. What is going on? Even my attacks are unable to damage this barrier, and your attack power is far below mine, so how did you damage the barrier? Before, when Greenwood had attacked, there had not even been a damage figure. Seeing the disappearing damage figures, Ling Chen smirked. It was just as he had thought. This barrier was incredibly tough, and even the powerful Greenwood was unable to damage it in the slightest. However, with the Lunar Scourge and its orbs, Ling Chen had a massive advantage. With the Cancer Orb, all of Ling Chen's attacks ignored all defense, which included even absolute defense. Although this barrier had incredibly high defense, such that it could ignore even Greenwood's attack, but it was completely disregarded by the Cancer Orb. Even so, it's useless. Granny Witherwood came back her senses as she slowly shook her head. Over thousands of years, my clan has had many powerful fairies who were able to damage the barrier. Our fairy clan's strongest weapon is also able to deal massive damage to it. However, this barrier is not only tough, but has incredibly strong regeneration abilities. Unless you can destroy it in one blow, it will instantly repair itself. Although your attacks can damage the barrier, but it's still too far away from being able to destroy it instantaneously. Even if you stand here and attack it for hundreds, or even thousands, of years, you won't be able to achieve anything. If the barrier could be destroyed so easily, it wouldn't have been able to seal the powerful fairy clan for such a long time. Although Ling Chen had the Lunar Scourge, he didn't naively believe that he would be able to destroy the barrier so easily. He yelled out as a red light, as well as ripples, began to emanate from his body. Soul Sacrifice. The fully leveled Soul Sacrifice raised his attack power by 400%. The shocking aura that he was releasing caused Greenwood and Granny Witherwood to feel slightly suffocated, which was simply unbelievable. How could this sort of aura appear on a LV-20 human? Four Corners Star Formation. 1,000-kilogram rend. Ha! Ling Chen roared as he unleashed his two most destructive abilities, mercilessly smashing them towards the space in front of him. A deafening explosion sounded out, causing Greenwood and Granny Witherwood's ears to ring as they saw two gigantic damage figures, -78 31243 143. A yellow damage figure and a red damage figure appeared in front of Ling Chen. The space in front of him trembled, and a crack that was as long as a finger appeared in front of him. However, it instantly disappeared. Ling Chen's strongest attacks in his strongest state were only able to slightly damage the barrier. Moreover, the damage lasted only for a split second. Greenwood and Granny Witherwood also saw the crack, and the shock in their hearts greatly surpassed that of Ling Chen's. Even for Greenwood, creating a small crack like that would be incredibly difficult, and yet that human had accomplished it so easily. However, the barrier was simply too powerful. Although that small crack was enough to make them feel shocked, it was completely inconsequential. Young human, you've caused this old granny to doubt her own eyes. With that sort of power, I believe that in the outside world, there isn't any barrier that can stop you. No wonder you had the confidence to destroy this barrier. However, this barrier was created by a moon goddess, as well as our clan's most powerful ancestors. Its toughness is comparable to that of the world boundaries that surround each continent. To be able to achieve this much, you've done quite well. However, even if that attack was 10 times stronger, you still wouldn't be able to destroy it. Granny Witherwood sighed as she shook her head. Ling Chen didn't reply. His left hand flashed with light as he recalled the Zephyr blade. He gripped the great Ravager with both hands as he lifted it high into the air. Battle Soul Possession. The red glow around his body was now mixed with a chaotic white light, causing Ling Chen's aura surge to be doubled. Those two strikes just then were simply Ling Chen running some tests. He didn't have any hopes for them to succeed. In order to destroy this barrier so that Shui Ruo could sleep peacefully in the fairy fountain, he took out his ace. Shura's Death Domain. The moment Shura's death domain activated, Ling Chen's mind rumbled, and his vision changed. The world in front of him instantly became crimson red, as if everything had been stained by blood. A terrifying and overwhelming murderous aura had burst out from within, flooding his body and mind. He felt as if he'd been possessed by a demon, and the killing intent released shocked even himself. This aura surged and began to eat away at his mental energy, trying to destroy his mind. This feeling surprised Ling Chen, but with his abnormally strong mental energy, it still would have been incredibly difficult for him to lose his sense of reason. He lifted up the great Ravager, allowing the ocean of energy to fill his body, and sent every bit of his strength into his downward swing. Break! Wow! Blood-red light burst out from within Ling Chen's body, making it look as if his entire body was bathed in a pool of blood. The great Ravager was also dyed by the light, making it look pure red. A terrifying wave of energy swept around Ling Chen's surroundings, and the originally clear sky instantly became dark as boundless black clouds covered the sky. Both Greenwood and Granny Witherwood gaped in fear and shock, and Granny Witherwood's walking stick clattered to the ground. She didn't hesitate as she grabbed Greenwood and yelled, "Hurry and leave." Their bodies flashed, and they teleported hundreds of meters away. And yet, that monstrous pressure still covered their bodies, causing them to tremble. This was true terror. It was the first time they had felt such terror in their lives. What was shocking was that the one who had caused this was the human who they thought to be insignificant. Blood-colored energy swirled around Ling Chen, and the pressure it released caused them to tremble uncontrollably. What sort of power is this? Greenwood stuttered. Was this really a LV-20 player? Was this really the same human who they had forced into the lunar sky hell? How could this aura, enough to freeze his blood, come from a mere human? This is an extremely cruel and merciless energy, but it's not the same as the evil energy from demon clans. This sort of energy exists solely to destroy and massacre. I even smelled the scent of death just then. This human, who, without her walking stick, Granny Witherwood stood with her back hunched, shivering uncontrollably. It was the first time she had felt such fear in her life. The great Ravager was surrounded by a crimson-red glow that was 5 meters long, and it smashed into the barrier. Boom! -31,325,000. The instant the great Ravager collided with the barrier, the incredibly tough barrier that had sealed the fairy clan for thousands of years was blown open like a sheet of thin ice. A 3-meter-high hole appeared in front of Ling Chen. Rumble. The ground of the entire fairy realm shook, and the air trembled. Countless fairies cried out in shock as they saw innumerable long cracks appearing in the sky above them. The cracks grew longer and spread out at a blinding speed, and soon they covered the entire sky. Following that, was the sound of glass shattering. Like a popped balloon, the barrier that surrounded the fairy realm was destroyed in seconds, and completely disappeared. The barrier has been destroyed. We can go out. When the ground stopped shaking, the fairies all started to cry out in joy. More and more voices joined the cheering, and soon, the ordinarily quiet fairy realm was filled with cheers of excitement and jubilation. It's broken, it's really broken. A gigantic hole had opened up in the barrier, and the cracks had spread all over the barrier, causing it to shatter. Greenwood's jaw dropped to the ground, unable to be closed, and he stared at Ling Chen fixedly. It was his greatest wish that the barrier would be broken. Now that it had been destroyed, he should be uncontrollably shouting and yelling for joy, but the shock and terror in his heart completely covered all the joy that he felt. At that moment, to them, Ling Chen was no longer a human or a player, but a monster. A monster who had been able to destroy the barrier that the fairy clan had been trying to destroy for thousands of years. "This is a miracle," Granny Witherwood whispered. After the barrier had been destroyed, the blood-red light still swirled around Ling Chen. Only now did it start to grow fainter and fainter until it disappeared. The great Ravager in Ling Chen's hands vanished. Ling Chen did not turn around, but fell to his knees on the ground, with one hand on his head and the other clawing the ground. Fury, bloodlust and brutality, all sorts of negative emotions and thoughts chaotically swirled around within his mind, developing the greatest killing intent Ling Chen had ever felt in his entire life. Ling Chen gritted his teeth as he did his best to suppress those feelings, his body covered in cold sweat. If he could see his eyes, he would find that they had become a dark crimson color. "Little master, control your emotions. Don't let those negative emotions and thoughts affect you. The Shura's ultimate moves all require killing intent to fuel them. The Shura's killing intent is boundless, but Little Master is not a Shura. After forcefully using that skill, a lot of the remnant negative emotions and killing intent is still within you. If you can't contain it, you'll become an out-of-control killing machine," Chi Yu quickly said in his mind. In reality, she was not too worried. After all, Ling Chen's mental energy was simply too powerful. Even the lunar scourge couldn't destroy his mind, much less these negative emotions and thoughts. Sure enough, not too long after, Ling Chen's body stopped trembling. He looked up, and his eyes had recovered their original look and color. He deeply breathed in and out, then stood up. He looked at his hands, trying to calm down his heart. This was the power of a Shura. With his power at LV20, using one of the Shura's ultimate skills was able to release such damage. How powerful would a true Shura be? Ding! You forcefully activated the limited use skill, Shura's Death Domain. Your level will be decreased by 9 levels, Strength 30, Constitution 30, Agility 30, Spirit 30. Ding! Your level has been decreased to LV11. The bonus stats from Wind Chaser Bandana, Purple Crystal Armor, Lower, Ghost Cloak, for Spirit Ring have been invalidated. Your strength is lower than 200, so you cannot equip the Great Ravager. Your pet Xiao Hui's level has decreased to LV11, with no changes to the level of its skills. Your pet Ling'er's level has decreased to LV11, with no changes to the levels of its skills. Ding! Shura's Death Domain remaining uses. 1 inch using an incredibly overpowered and broken skill like Shura's Death Domain had incredibly harsh repercussions. Ling Chen's level had fallen by 9 levels, and wasn't able to equip his strongest weapon anymore. Furthermore, although he still had on his equipment, he could not receive the benefits from the bonus stats from the 4 strongest ones. If he removed them, he wouldn't even be able to equip them again. He had suffered a loss of 120 points of stats in total. If it wasn't for Ling Chen's professions, Ling Tian Battle Soul and Fengchen Curse Zani, which gave him many stat points, some of his stats would have fallen into the negatives. However, this was worth it. In front of him, there were no more distortions in the air. The barrier was gone. After hearing those announcements, Ling Chen didn't look crestfallen at all, but rather, smiled. Levels could be gained back and stats could be earned back. In order to protect Shui Ruo's safety in her last bit of hope, as well as repay the fairy clan, this wasn't much of a loss for him. After completely calming down, Ling Chen took a deep breath, then turned and walked to Greenwood and Granny Witherwood, saying, "The barrier has been destroyed. My only request is that you allow my little sister to safely stay within the fairy fountain until I come to wake her up again." No matter if it was Greenwood or Granny Witherwood, they looked at Ling Chen in a completely new light. That overwhelming, horrifying pressure that felt like it would devour their souls, was like the aura of demon gods only heard of in legends. "That girl, we will guarantee that no one disturbs her," Greenwood said with difficulty, as his throat was completely dry. In his ears, the joyful shouts grew louder and louder, but he still couldn't believe what had happened. A LV-20 human had destroyed the barrier that had sealed the fairy clan for thousands of years. Granny Witherwood recovered much faster than Greenwood. She stepped forwards as she sincerely said, "Young human, you've created a miracle. This miracle has saved our entire fairy clan. I only did it for my little sister. Moreover, I didn't want to owe you anything. I never feel at ease owing people." Ling Chen replied in a casual tone. "Regardless, you are our fairy clan's savior and great benefactor. By destroying this barrier, you have saved our entire clan, as well as our descendants. This cannot be repaid simply by allowing your little sister to rest in the fairy fountain. Our fairy clan does not like to owe other people either. We will remember what you have done forever. We definitely will not allow anyone to disturb your little sister. Moreover, you can request anything of us. As long as it is within our power and conforms with our morals, we will do our best to fulfill it," Granny Witherwood earnestly said. Seeing that the barrier was gone, the entire fairy clan was in full celebration. Today was the most lively day in the history of the fairy realm. What the lack of the barrier meant for the fairy clan wasn't just that they could freely go into the outside world, it meant that their race was no longer doomed. After finding out that it was Ling Chen who destroyed the barrier, the animosity that the fairies held towards Ling Chen instantly disappeared, and was replaced with gratefulness and respect, as well as fervor. Countless fairy ancestors had tried and failed to destroy this barrier, but it had actually been destroyed by this human. This human, who they had looked down on, became like a god within every fairy's heart. Very soon, Ling Chen was even described to be an ambassador sent from the heavens. As for the matter of allowing Ling Chen's little sister to rest in the fairy fountain, there were no fairies in objection anymore. Greenwood's joy was also evident, and he profusely thanked Ling Chen. However, he simply couldn't get rid of the shock in his heart. He had personally witnessed Ling Chen destroy the barrier. Greenwood could almost still feel that demon godlike pressure bearing down on him, and he would shiver whenever he thought about it. Although the barrier was gone, none of the fairies left the fairy realm. The fairies had disappeared from the Forgotten Continent for thousands of years, and now faced the issue of how to interact with the outside world. Before making sufficient preparations, they wouldn't leave the fairy realm. It seemed that this would take a long time. After staying in the fairy realm for half a day, Ling Chen came to the fairy fountain and looked at Shura for a long time, before turning around and saying, "Granny Witherwood, Fairy Chief Greenwood and everyone, I should be going. I leave my little sister to you. Don't worry. We won't allow anything to happen to her," Granny Witherwood replied. There was not a single fairy who was against this matter anymore. "Are you sure you don't want to stay for a few days? We haven't even properly thanked you yet," Greenwood said. "No need," Ling Chen shook his head, "helping me look after Shura is enough. There's no need for anything else." Ling Chen walked in front of Ing Shui, and took out her first wings as he apologetically said, "Ing Shui, these are your first wings. Back then, I didn't take them on purpose. I didn't know that it would be so important to you fairies. I'm so sorry about what happened. However, I'm a human, not a fairy, so I don't follow your fairy traditions. I'll return your first wings to you now." Ing Shui didn't stretch out her hands to receive them. She only stared at him as her chest ached with pain. Greenwood and Granny Witherwood sighed inwardly, but didn't say anything. Indeed, it was wrong to force fairy traditions on a human, and they couldn't force their great benefactor to bend to their will. It was just that this outcome was not very ideal for Ing Shui. "I refuse. No matter what, when a fairy loses their first wings, they don't have the right to take them back. If you feel like they're a burden to you, feel free to throw them away." Ing Shue's beautiful face flashed with anger, and her voice was incredibly cold. After speaking, she turned around and disappeared in a white flash. Ling Chen held Ing Shue's first wings in his hands, his face full of awkwardness. Seeing the expressions of the fairies around him, he could only silently put them away. He once again said his goodbyes, and walked towards the direction he had entered from. After placing Shui Ruo in the fairy fountain, Ling Chen did not have anything else to worry about. His mission was now to gather all of the lunar scourge's orbs. Before gathering all of the ingredients required, he most likely would not be coming back here. He didn't know when he would back, and didn't even know where to start searching. However, what he did know was that no matter how arduous and difficult this journey was, he would see it to the end. When Ling Chen left, all of the fairies in the fairy realm came to see him off in order to show their gratitude. After walking for a long time, Ling Chen finally came to the place where he had arrived after being transported by the bewildering formation. The barrier that had blocked it off was now gone, and if he continued to walk forwards, the bewildering formation would send him outside. Big brother! Big brother, please wait! An urgent shout sounded out from behind him. Ling Chen stopped walking, and turned around. The little Kayer furiously flapped her wings as she rushed towards Ling Chen. Ling Chen smiled and said, "Is Kayer unwilling to see me leave?" Kayer flew as fast as she could, and finally reached Ling Chen. After huffing and puffing, she stretched out her hand towards Ling Chen. In the middle of her hand was a small bottle, as big as one's pinky finger. "Big brother, Granny told me to give this to you. Granny said that it will help you a lot." A bottle? Could it be medicine? Ling Chen took the bottle and shook it. Indeed, it was some sort of liquid. Fairy fountain water, water that comes from the fairy realm's fairy fountain. It contains the purest nature energy in the world. After drinking, HP plus 1000 permanently, MP plus 1000 permanently. Strength plus 10, Constitution plus 10, Agility plus 10 and Spirit plus 10 permanently. The effects can only take place once. Clatter, the little bottle fell to the ground. Hallucinating. Ling Chen was sure that he was hallucinating. Ling Chen picked up the bottle with a whoosh, and he read the description again and again. No, the effects weren't just temporary, they would permanently add 1000 HP, 1000 MP, and 40 points of stats. Permanently. After his stats had all been decreased by 30, Ling Chen's current HP and MP were only around 700. This tiny bottle of water from the fairy fountain could actually more than double them. Moreover, it also gave him a total of 40 stat points. Big brother, are you alright? You don't like it? Water from the fairy fountain tastes really good. It's very cool and refreshing. Kayer said as she tilted her head. No, I really like it. Ling Chen gripped the tiny bottle in his hand. Inwardly, he finally realized why the fairy clan viewed the fairy fountain so importantly. It was simply incredible. This little bottle of water was the most powerful item Ling Chen had seen in Mystic Moon. He looked up at Kayer and asked, "Kayer, can you ask your granny if she can give me a few more bottles of this water? I want to bring some back for your big sisters." "Oh, I'll go and ask Granny. Wait here for me, big brother." Kayer nodded as she obediently flew back. After a while, Kayer again flew over like a little butterly. In her arms were 10 little bottles. When she had given them all to Ling Chen couldn't help but beam like a child. "Granny told me to give these to big brother. She told me to tell you that it takes a long time for the fairy fountain to produce a drop of water, so we can't take too much at once. If we take too much, it will affect the nature energy in the fairy realm, so we can't take any more for now. It's enough, it's enough. Remember to thank your granny for me." Ling Chen carefully put away the 11 bottles of fairy fountain water as he screamed inwardly, "I'm rich. Any player who used this game-breaking item would be able to have a massive advantage over all other players. That's right, there's also this. Kair opened her hand. It was a pair of jade green earrings that were as big as a fingernail. Big sister told me to give these to you. She said that if you don't want them, you can throw them away, but she won't take them back. Ling Chen, earrings. Out of all the jewelry equipment, he already had a ring and a necklace. The only thing he was missing were earrings. Could it be that Ling Shui had noticed that he didn't have a pair? Ling Chen picked up the jade green earrings from Kair's little hand, his heart full of complicated emotions, which he quickly suppressed. He looked at the description and stats of the earrings. Fairy's blessing, type, earring, grade, gold, equipment requirements, luck must be greater than 5. An earring that contains the blessing of a fairy. After equipping, recovery plus 30% when using recovery items or benefiting from recovery skills. This earring's effects were incredibly useful. An additional 30% recovery would often mean the difference between life and death. Ling Chen thought for a few moments before putting the earrings on. He said to Kair, "Kair, please thank your big sister for me, and tell her that I really like the earrings, and have already put them on." Gold-grade earrings were worth far more than other gold-grade equipment, due to their rarity. This gift was much too precious, and Ling Chen simply couldn't think of what to give Ling Shui in exchange. He looked through his bag, and found that the thing that he carried the most of, were dolls. As such. Also, please give this doll to your big sister for me, oh, and here's the one for Kair. The big one's for your sister, and the smaller one's for Kair. Ling Chen took out a big doll and a small doll, and gave them to Kair. Wow! These toys are so cute. They're even prettier than the ones big sister bought last time. Kair happily yelled as she hugged the two dolls, her body flying around in circles. Her eyes shone with joy as she said, "I'm sure big sister will like these pretty dolls. After I came back last time with those toys, everyone was really jealous of me. Big sister really liked them too, and would always try to play with them. She'll be really, really happy to receive this from you." That cold fairy liked dolls as well? It seemed that it was the right decision for him to carry around a mountain of dolls with him. "Big brother, are you going now?" After calming down from her excitement, Kair looked at Ling Chen with disappointment in her eyes. Ling Chen nodded. "Then, when will you be back?" "I'm not sure." Ling Chen could only give this answer. He would only be back when he had gathered all of the necessary ingredients to revive Shui Ruo. He had no idea when that day would be. Then, Kair's eyes shone as a look desire, as well as hesitation, appeared on her face. It seemed that there was some internal conflict going on within her. After a while, she finally said, "Big brother, can you secretly bring me with you? The barrier's gone, but Dad won't let me go out. I really want to go and play outside, I think about it every day." "No, I can't do that," Ling Chen said as he gently patted her head. "All right, go back now. Make sure you listen to the adults. If you ran off by yourself, everyone would be very worried about you." "I'm going now." Without giving Kair an opportunity to respond, Ling Chen waved, and walked forwards into the bewildering formation, then disappeared. "Big brother, woo," seeing that Ling Chen was gone, Kair started to cry. In front of her was the exit of the fairy realm. She really wanted to go, but she was afraid that she would get lost, or run into something scary. Moreover, there was also her dad's orders. She stayed there for a long time, gazing out, then turned around and flew back. Right now, the only thing he could do was do his best to look for the Lunar Scourge's orbs. The more orbs he found, the more powerful he would become. Only then would he be qualified to seek the Demon Emperor's soul and Moon Goddess's blood. With the sheer size of the Forgotten Continent, running around without specific places to search meant that it could take him an eternity. Moreover, according to Chi Yu, the orbs were all in extremely secret or dangerous places, or were in the possession of powerful creatures. They would all be incredibly difficult to obtain. The Gemini orb was given to him by Tao Tai, the Sagittarius orb was found by Xiao Hui in the war god's trial ground, the Cancer orb was given to him by the Shura spirit, and the Pisces orb had been gifted to him by Xiao Fengchen. Out of these 4 orbs, the first and fourth were gifted to him, and the other 2 had been found by sheer luck. After all, he had coincidentally obtained these orbs, and had not gone out of his way to search for them. All of the orbs had appeared to him by themselves, he had never expected to find them where he did. Now, he didn't even know where to start looking for the remaining orbs. However, he wasn't worried about how he would find them, after all, he had Xiao Hui. Whenever they passed by a place, if there was any treasure, Xiao Hui would be sure to find it. Little master, you should first raise your level back up. You've become far too weak, and don't have the power to search for the mysterious god-grade orbs. I recommend that little master does nothing but train until he's LV 50. That'll make little master's life a lot easier. Not only will you be able to enter the Lost City, but you'll be able to go to at least half of the places in the Forgotten Continent. Chi Yu knew what Ling Chen was thinking about, so she gave her recommendation. Truthfully, even Chi Yu didn't know where to start looking for the orbs. The Forgotten Continent was simply too vast, and if one wanted to search every inch of it, it would take several lifetimes. Ling Chen considered Chi Yu's words, and nodded. My level is indeed far too low right now. If I don't raise my level, searching the Forgotten Continent will just be a joke. He thought back to half a month ago, when he had met Daoist Tian Qing and Xiao Fengchen at the Vermilion Bird City. As he muttered, Xiao Fengchen seems to be on good terms with that old Daoist. If that old Daoist can find a successor, maybe that successor will be able to tell me where the orbs are. I hope they can find that person soon. For now, I'll just train. It was already getting late, so Ling Chen took a look at his greatly reduced stats, then logged off. Ling Chen got up, but found that Tian was not next to him. He sniffed, and smelled something cooking in the kitchen. He raised his eyebrows as he smiled amusedly. The reason he had logged off so early was so he could cook dinner for Tian. He never thought that Tian would have logged off even earlier than him, and it seemed that dinner was almost ready. Walking into the dining hall, Ling Chen saw that there were already 2 dishes and a big bowl of soup on the table, which all looked quite decent. Although they might not taste too good, but at least they were burnt, and didn't have any strange smells. Hearing the sounds from outside, Tian poked her head out of the kitchen. She was wearing a white apron and holding a spatula. Seeing Ling Chen, she blinked as she asked, "Big brother, are you hungry? Wait for a bit, there's still one more dish, and the porridge is nearly ready. I'll come and help," Ling Chen said as he smiled. When it came to cooking, Tian could be barely considered to be a beginner, whereas he was world-class. Okay, it's going to be burnt. Tian happily agreed, then darted back into the kitchen. With Ling Chen helping out, dinner was finished quickly. 3 dishes, a big bowl of soup, 2 bowls and 2 pairs of chopsticks, but they were missing someone. Ling Chen was unable to quickly adjust to this, and he often still felt melancholic. However, seeing the little girl who was sitting opposite him with her sweat-covered forehead and bright red cheeks, he felt much better. "Big brother, what are you doing in the game? Why did you say such a formal farewell?" all the big sisters cried. Tian asked the question she had been holding the whole day as she filled Ling Chen's bowl with porridge. Ling Chen leaving didn't mean much to her, since they were living together. However, the feeling was completely different for the other girls. Ling Chen knew that Tian would ask this question, and he casually replied, "I'm looking for some things that are very important, but I don't know when I'll be able to find them all. I don't want to have other things distracting me before I've found them, so I said goodbye to your big sisters." "Alright Tian, let's eat." "I see, Tian sort of understood, but sort of didn't. She didn't continue to ask, and started eating. She looked at Ling Chen as she rested her cheeks on her hands and said, "Oh, by the way, big brother, your communication device was turned off for the entire day today. There was a lot of things that we wanted to tell you, but couldn't." Big sister Chi also said goodbye to us, saying that she was going to the south to find, right, the vermilion bird. She should be there now, since her communication device is also off. Ling Chen's actions slowed down, and he nodded as he said, "She made the right decision. When she comes back, she might even be more powerful than me." And also, big sister Su also left. After big sister Chi left, big sister Su went to say goodbye to her. Afterwards, she said that she was going somewhere, and might be away for a long time. Ling Chen looked up, shocked. "Where's Su going? What sort of place is that?" Ling Chen was incredibly surprised, as well as curious. Su'er had never mentioned anything like that to him before. Moreover, Su'er's personality was quite soft, and was quite dependent on her friends. It was quite rare that she would make a decision like this by herself. Where could she have gone? "So now it's just you and Bing Yao?" Ling Chen sighed inwardly. Yunmeng Xian had given up on her battle profession, Shao Qi and Su'er had left, and Shui Rua, out of the original team of 6 girls, only Tian and Mu Bingyao remained. He didn't know when he would be able to see those 6 girls fight together again. Right now it's big sister Bingyao who's training me. Big sister Bingyao has been teaching me a lot about something called battle sense, but a lot of it I can't understand or learn properly. Tian's voice became smaller as she talked, evidently embarrassed by her inability to learn. Battle sense? Ling Chen shook his head as he placed some food into Tian's bowl, saying, "Tomorrow, tell your big sister Bing Yao that I said that she doesn't need to teach you those things. Tian, just play however you want in the game, in any way that makes you happy, alright? Hehe, big brother's the best." Mu Bingyao evidently wanted Tian to become stronger, and unlock the full potential of her strongest profession. However, this wasn't what Ling Chen wanted for her. Only after losing something would one truly treasure it and know how important it was. Now, Ling Chen just wanted Tian to live happily and heavily. He didn't want her to have any unnecessary burdens after all she had been through. At night, after making sure that Tian was asleep, Ling Chen once again returned to the mystic moon world. Ling Chen sent 10 bottles of the fairy fountain water to Yunmeng Xian, as well as a memo for how to distribute them. One was for Yunfeng and one was for Xiao Qiufeng in order to thank them for helping him that night. 2 were for Shao Qi and Su'er, and another 2 were for Mu Bingyao and Tian. The remaining 5 bottles were for Yunmeng Xian to do what she pleased with them, whether she wanted to sell them, auction them or keep them was up to her. This sort of overpowered item would be able to sell for astronomical prices. Ling Chen took out the remaining bottle and drank the contents. Immediately, an incredibly refreshing and cool taste entered his mouth, filling his entire body. Ding! You have consumed fairy fountain water, HP plus 1000, MP plus 1000, Strength plus 10, Constitution plus 10, Agility plus 10, Spirit plus 10. A small bottle of fountain water had caused his HP and MP to more than double. This sort of shocking effect could make people go crazy. After looking at his current stats, Ling Chen took out a teleport scroll and teleported to the town closest to the fairy forest, then walked out the southern exit of that town. The fairy forest was a completely natural region, and all the beasts inside it were quite weak and cowardly. Most of them had no attack power at all, and were all LV0. Because this town was close to the fairy forest, the monsters here weren't very high level either. Ling Chen remembered that there were some LV20 monsters to the south of this town. With his current strength, it would best for him to train in this region. Not too long after walking out of the town, he reached a vast grassy plain, and saw herds of gray sheep. Gray sheep, type, beast, level, LV20, HP, 800, a mutant sheep that is completely gray. It has a bloated body and incredibly sharp horns. Its innocent expression reduces people's desire to attack it. Passive abilities, 20% resistance against all magic damage, can slowly recover its HP by eating grass. Attack skills, charge, uses its horns to charge into enemies. Attack power is average, and frequency of attacks is high. 20% change of critical strikes. Weaknesses, slow movement speed, slow reaction speed. Bang 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 bang. Minus 1339, minus 1386, minus 1391, minus 2800, minus 1385. A cluster of bangs rang out as the zephyr blade sent a light green arc of light into a group of 5 gray sheep. They were all blasted away as they were insta-killed, and dropped a large patch of sheep wool and copper coins. Although Ling Chen's stats and level had been decreased, and was unable to use the Great Ravager, he was still able to easily insta-kill these ordinary LV-20 monsters. After all, he still had the Heaven Wind technique and War God technique, as well as 2 celestial-grade weapons, and the Cancer Orb which ignored defense and Sagittarius Orb which gave him absolute hit. Seeing that someone was killing their kin, the other gray sheep started to charge over, raising their horns at Ling Chen. However, their fates had been sealed from the instant Ling Chen arrived. Ling Chen was able to completely destroy these sheep with one hand, let alone both hands. Whenever he attacked, 2 large arcs of light would shoot out, destroying all the gray sheep that had come close. As long as Ling Chen didn't let down his guard, he wouldn't be in any danger. Ling Chen was like a tiger among the herd of sheep and rushed across the gray sheep territory over and over again, from north to south, from east to west. Sheep wool fell everywhere, and bleats repeatedly rang out. Xiao Hui faithfully ran around collecting coins and potions, as well as the equipment that occasionally appeared, but didn't pay any attention to the sheep wool. The gray sheep originally filled the whole grassy plain. At the beginning, when Ling Chen had jumped into a crowd of sheep, it was the sheep charging towards him. After a few minutes, it had become Ling Chen chasing the sheep, and after a while, there were only a few sheep left. Half an hour later, there was not a single sheep left, they had all become EXP for Ling Chen. Ling Chen stood in the middle of the gray sheep territory, his hands holding his weapons as he looked around in annoyance. Xiao Hui lay behind him, wagging his tail happily. It wasn't that there weren't enough monsters here, or that they respawned too slowly, but that the speed at which he destroyed them was simply too fast. 1 second, one herd, the next second, the next herd. It was simply impossible for the respawn rate to keep up with him. After a long time, a few gray sheep finally respawned. Ling Chen shot over like a starved wolf, and within a few seconds, the ground was once again littered with sheep wool. From north to south, from east to west, Ling Chen killed the gray sheep again and again. A training area that was big enough for 20 to 30 people was monopolized by him. Despite the Heaven's Jealousy debuff, killing monsters that were 9 levels higher than him in large groups caused his LV11 EXP bar to fill up quickly. After killing and waiting for the gray sheep to respawn 20 or so times, a significantly larger gray sheep appeared, with 2 flashing stars above its head. Ling Chen didn't even bother to look at its stats as he sent 2 Ling Tian bursts over. The newly spawned 2-star elite didn't even get to breathe before it was reduced to a corpse. Ding, you have killed the LV-22 star elite, Super Gray Sheep, SP plus 40, Fame plus 40. Young master, we have some bad news. Speak. Long Tian Yun looked up, his face expressionless. It's Ling Tian, his fame on the fame rankings, has increased. Flame Shadow stuttered. Long Tian Yun shot up, his face dark. Ever since that night, they had not stopped trying to track down Ling Chen. They were sure that even if Ling Chen wasn't dead, he was most likely crippled. However, even so, the shadow that he had left on the entire Long family was simply too great, and they weren't willing to take any risks. They simply couldn't allow Ling Chen to keep living. After so many days, they still had not received any information, and he had also disappeared from the game world. To the Long family, this was good. After all, no news was good news. Long Tianyun was finally able to gradually calm down. Surely, that Ling Tian was dead. Are you sure that it's Ling Tian? Long Tianyun asked as he gnashed his teeth. Flame Shadow quickly nodded his head. We're certain. He has fallen from the player level rankings, but his ranking on the fame rankings hasn't changed. Currently, the only person in all of China who has broken the 10,000 fame points barrier is Ling Tian, and his fame just increased by 40 points. Evidently, he just finished a quest, or killed a small boss. Every person in the intelligence group can confirm this. Bang! Long Tianyun smashed his fist onto the table. He's not dead, he's actually not dead. Long Tianyun suddenly turned to look at Flame Shadow. His eyes were like fiery pits, causing Flame Shadow to shiver. Although he's alive, his life isn't going to be easy. Right now, everyone knows his face. No matter where he goes, he'll be found by people, and we'll never have peace. We'll definitely find him. He has to die. Yes, yes. I know what I'm required to do. The intelligence group will give young master a satisfactory answer very soon. Flame Shadow quickly said as he retreated. Long Tianyun sat back down in his chair, his face steeled. He replayed the events that had happened that night. He once again saw that blood-stained face, and those hands clamping down on his throat like they were made of steel. Long Tianyun's body shook as his face became pale. That time was the closest he had ever been to death, and ever since that night, he had been plagued by nightmares. If Ling Tian didn't die, he would be forever haunted by this nightmare. Ling Tian must die. Ding, you have leveled up to LV12, HP plus 20, MP plus 10, Strength plus 5, Agility plus 1, Spirit plus 1. Ding, you have leveled up to LV13. Ding, you have leveled up to LV14. Ding, you have leveled up to LV20, HP plus 20, MP plus 10, Strength plus 5, Agility plus 1, Spirit plus 1. Ding, your pet, Xiao Hui has leveled up to LV20. Ding, your humanoid pet, Ling has leveled up to LV20. Ling Chen stayed in the Grey Sheep territory for a whole 6 days. During those 6 days, Ling Chen did not leave the Grey Sheep territory at all, and spent 10 or so hours farming the Grey Sheep again and again. Soon, he was back at LV20, and was able to re-equip the Great Ravager. As soon as he reached LV20, Ling Chen rushed out of the Grey Sheep territory and sat on the ground. During that week, he had lost count of how many sheep he had killed, and he was completely sick of seeing those fat sheep and hearing their bleats. By now, he could probably mimic their bleats perfectly. Phew, I can't stay in this place anymore. It's time for me to find a new place to train. At this rate, if I use all of my time to train, should be able to reach LV30 in 10 days by killing LV30 monsters. Ling Chen said to himself. He then took out his communication device and checked his voice messages. An announcement sounded out, and he saw that he had received a voice message about 2 hours ago. Ling Chen looked at it, and found that the sender was actually Su'er. Ling Chen immediately opened the message. Big brother Ling Chen, it's Su'er. I can't contact you, so I decided to leave a voice message. I hope you can see this message soon. After separating with you for so many days, I really miss Big Brother Ling Tian. However, I can't do anything to help you. I knew how much pain Big Brother Ling Tian was going through, but I couldn't do anything about it. But, Big Brother Ling Tian is the strongest and the best, so I'm sure everything will go well for you. I will pray for Big Brother Ling Chen every day, and pray that I can meet you again soon. Ling Chen, Big Brother Ling Chen, on the day you left, I met two grandpas. One of them said he was your master, and said that he was called Xiao Feng Chen. The other one is now my master. That day, they mentioned you, and said that you needed their help. And so, I left with my master, and went to a place called the Heaven's Secrets Mountain, and joined the Heaven's Secrets sect. Master has been passing on to me the power of Heaven's Secrets. This power is very mysterious and unbelievable, and I can't believe that it exists. Master didn't trick me at all. These days, I've finally been able to see a bit of Heaven's Secrets, and can see some simple things. I also saw the things that Big Brother Ling Chen are looking for. They're 15 orbs that can glow. Big Brother Ling Chen has obtained 4 so far, and still has 11 to go. Of these 11 orbs, one of them is at a place past the Eerie Mountain Ridge in the east, within a mysterious palace. Master said that I'm still in the foundation phase, so I shouldn't recklessly reveal Heaven's Secrets, otherwise I'll receive divine punishment. If I have to use it, I can only use it very, very sparingly. I'll definitely work hard, so that by the time I can see Heaven's Secrets again, I'll find the next orb for Big Brother Ling Chen. Make sure to send me voice messages, Big Brother Ling Chen. Ling Chen jumped to his feet and looked to the east. Shura. Heaven's Secrets sect, the successor that Taoist Tian Qing was looking for, was actually Shura, and she had actually gone with him. This was an incredible coincidence. Past the Eerie Mountain Ridge in the east, within a mysterious palace, so that was the place where she saw one of the Lunar Scourge's orbs. East, Eerie Mountain Ridge. Wait a second, the Lonely Spirit Ridge was in the east, and it was an incredibly eerie mountain ridge. Past the Eerie Mountain Ridge in the east, within a mysterious palace, could it be that past the Lonely Spirit Ridge, there was another region? Profession: Ling Chen Battle Soul, Fengchen Curse Zani Affiliation, Nun Fame Points, 14,513, Money, 83,650,019, SP, 470. Basic Stats: Strength, 260, Constitution, 44, Agility, 60, Spirit, 68 Innate Attributes, Luck, 15, Comprehension, 15 HP, 2343, MP, 2080 Physical Attack Power, 1208, Magical Attack Power, 136 Defense, 218 Hit, Evasion, 91 Critical Chance, 31%, Pierce Chance, 100% Attack Speed, 100, Movement Speed, 175 Elemental Resistances, Water, 0%, Fire, 0%, Wind, 10%, Lightning, 0%, Earth, 0%, Light, 0%, Darkness, 18%. These were Ling Chen's current stats. With the help of the fairy fountain water, both Ling Chen's HP and MP were above 2000, increasing his ability to survive. Ling Chen took out his map, and looked to the east of the Forgotten Continent. On the map, the Lonely Spirit Ridge was labeled as a dangerous region. After the war demon beast had been destroyed by Shi Ling's 9 sons' heavenly wrath, that place was no longer dangerous anymore. The entire Lonely Spirit Ridge had been turned into ruins, and countless mountain ridges had been burned to the ground. The region to the east of the Lonely Spirit Ridge was marked by a black, and had a striking description: "This is a barren area, and apart from a few mountain ridges, there is nothing else." It doesn't seem eerie, but there seems to be a powerful nature spirit sleeping there. When I approached, its pressure warned me, causing me to turn back. It is best not to get close to here. So there was another series of mountain ridges to the east of the Lonely Spirit Ridge? The description said that a powerful nature spirit was sleeping there. If even Qian Gun, who had lived for countless years, felt afraid, it was most probably quite terrifying. However, since it concerned Shui Ruo's chances of revival, Ling Chen had to go, no matter what. Ling Chen took out a teleport scroll to Peace Town, which was the closest town to the ghastly grounds. Ling Chen had been to quite a few places, and whenever he reached a town, he would buy many teleport scrolls. Although it took up quite a bit of space in his bag, but he would never throw them away. This habit had helped him on quite a few occasions. After all, if he didn't have this teleport scroll to Peace Town, he would have to set out from the Azure Dragon City again, wasting much time in the process. 15 kilometers to the northeast was the Ghastly Grounds. Because of the Ghastly Grounds, Peace Town had an eerie air to it as well, and there was always a thin layer of black fog hovering above it. When looking around, almost every house was tightly closed, and there were not many people on the streets. Ling Chen didn't plan on staying in the Ghastly Grounds. He called out the cloud-stepping mare and shot towards the lonely Spirit Ridge. Just as he rushed out of Peace Town's northeastern boundary, he saw a small figure. As soon as he saw her, his eyes widened, and he almost fell down from his horse. Tian, what are you doing here?" Ling Chen yelled out. He never thought that he would meet Tian here. Normally, players wouldn't be willing to get close to such an eerie place, and yet, here she was. Moreover, Mu Bingyao was not around, she seemed to be by herself. Hearing the voice, Tian turned around. Upon seeing Ling Chen, her mouth opened wide, looking even more shocked than Ling Chen. She yelled out the same question as Ling Chen, "Ah. Big brother, what are you doing here?" Ling Chen went over and looked around, and confirmed that Mu Bingyao wasn't around, as he asked, "This place is very dangerous, and isn't suitable for training. Why did you come here? And where's your big sister Bingyao?" "Big sister Bingyao took me here, because there aren't many people here and it's quite safe. There are also many quests to do in this town." "Oh, right, big sister Bingyao seemed to have an urgent matter, so she left first. She told me to wait here for her, and if she wasn't back within 30 minutes, I should go back to Azure Dragon City. I didn't end up waiting for big sister Bingyao, but I found big brother instead, hee. Tian giggled as she looked up at him. Evidently, she was quite happy that she had coincidentally run into him. Tian was holding a jade green staff and was wearing the robe with magic patterns that Ling Chen had given her. She was also wearing a pair of magical embroidered shoes, and adding on her cute little body, she looked like a little magician from an anime. Ling Chen thought for a few moments before asking, Tian, how long have you waited?" Long Tian Yun was most likely also investigating Tian, so Mu Bingyao took her to a place where there were not many other players. Mu Bingyao leaving on urgent business was also quite normal. About a really long time," Tian said in a small voice. She then asked, "Big brother, why are you here? And where are you going?" Ling Chen pointed to the east. "I'm going towards the east." "Then take me with you." Tian walked forwards to Ling Chen's horse, her face filled with a hopeful look. Ling Chen shook his head. "The place I'm going to is very dangerous, and isn't suitable for you. Just be good and wait here for your big sister Bingyao, or go back to Azure Dragon City. Don't run around by yourself." No way, please take me with you, big brother. I really want to go as well. I'm really scared by myself. I promise that I'll listen to big brother and won't be a burden." Tian's begged as her hands grabbed onto Ling Chen's hand and shook it. Ling Chen continued to shake his head. Tian, I really can't take you. That place is far too dangerous and scary. It's fine. With big brother, I won't feel scared. Big brother, please take me with you. You've never played with me in the game before. Tian grasped onto Ling Chen's hand, unwilling to let go. Tian's last sentence caused Ling Chen to pause, unable to reject her again. Indeed, in the game, it was either that Shui Ruo was with him, or he did things by himself. Now that Shui Ruo had left, Shao Qi had left, Su'er left, it was just Mu Bingyao who could be with Tian. Mu Bingyao's personality was quite cold, and she rarely spoke much. It was hard for Tian to feel happy around her. Seeing Tian's eyes filled with hope and expectation, Ling Chen could only nod. All right, then I'll take Tian with me this time. However, you need to be good and listen to me, and you're not allowed to run off by yourself. If I tell you to run, you have to run, okay? I'll definitely listen to Big Brother. Tian's eyes sparkled like diamonds and she almost started to jump up and down in excitement. Seeing her like this, Ling Chen's heart twinged, and he grabbed Tian's little hand and pulled her up. He placed her in front of him as he said, "All right, let's go." "Yay, Big Brother's the best." Tian leaned against Ling Chen, a happy look on her face. Her long eyelashes fluttered as she blinked in excitement. Ling Chen returned to Peacetown and found the old grandpa to buy tens of bowls of rice porridge. He wouldn't forget about the undead aura in the ghastly grounds that could reduce HP. Drinking a bowl of rice porridge would greatly reduce the HP loss there. There probably won't be any issues with bringing Tian, right? Ling Chen thought to himself as he rode on. He was going to search for something, and not fight some super monster. He would avoid all monsters on the way, and with his movement speed and agility, he probably wouldn't run into any danger. After thinking about it, he felt much more reassured, and continued to speed towards the ghastly grounds. The whole way, Tian was in high spirits, and would continuously talk to him and ask him questions. Ling Chen could feel that after Shui Ruo had passed away, Tian had changed drastically. She was no longer stubborn and lazy, and wouldn't make unreasonable demands. Instead, she was caring and obedient, and gradually learned to look after their home. He knew who it was that Tian had made these changes for. It was just as he had said on that night, to himself. Tian, you're stronger than me. Half an hour later, they arrived at the ghastly grounds. It was the same as when he had come last time. It was definitely daytime, but it was as if night had just fallen. The air was filled with thick gray smog, reducing visibility of the surrounding area. A gust of cold wind blew over, bringing with it a rotten smell, as well as sounds that sounded like crying and howling. The undead monsters in the ghastly grounds were not very high level. The lowest were around LV5, and the highest were around LV25. It was completely possible for players of the current stage of the game to deal with the monsters here. However, not a single player was within sight. The atmosphere here was simply too terrifying, and most people wouldn't have the guts to enter such a place. Chatter. Ha 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 ha, all sorts of blood-chilling sounds came from around them, which could cause any grown man's teeth to chatter. Ling Chen could feel Tian's body trembling, and he pulled her closer into his embrace. He stopped the cloud-stepping mare and lowered his head as he asked, Tian, are you scared? Tian nodded, and shrank into his embrace. It's really scary here, but it's so exciting. Big brother, let's hurry up and go further in. Ling Chen was speechless. He could feel that Tian was scared, but the excitement that was coming from her was real. Come to think of it, normally girls around Tian's age would be frightened to the point of tears. Since Tian was alright, Ling Chen decided to continue. Ling Chen and Tian both drank a bowl of rice porridge, and charged into the ghastly grounds. They soon disappeared into the thick, grey smog. The further ahead they went, the thicker the smog became, and the worse the rotting smell became. Some hazy figures began to appear, and although Ling Chen knew what they were, he couldn't help but shudder inwardly. He couldn't be bothered to deal with these zombies, and didn't reduce his speed at all. However, Tian. Wah! Zombies! Zombies! Just like the ones on TV. Ah, so scary. Little White, go and destroy them. Tian was scared to the point of yelling out when she saw her first zombie, causing Ling Chen's ears to ring. As she yelled, she gestured with her hands and 4 snow-white summons appeared near the zombie. They had round bodies, for short limbs and short tails, as well as red eyes and long buck teeth. They were all carrying carrots that were about half a meter long and as tall as themselves. That's right, they were one of Tion's summons, little white. 4 of them appeared simultaneously. Currently, Tion was LV-22, 2 levels higher than Ling Chen, and could now conjure 4 of her summons simultaneously. The little whites all rushed over, smashing their big carrots onto the zombie. -890, -911, -904, -900. The 4 little whites dealt almost 3,000 damage together. The LV-5 zombie, which only had around 600 HP, was instantly obliterated, and fell to the ground. The little whites also vanished. These zombies are so weak. Hee, my little whites are so strong. Seeing how easily the zombie had been defeated, Tion put her hands on her hips, evidently incredibly proud of herself and her summons. The fear from earlier was completely gone. Humph, these zombies are nothing special. Behind her, Ling Chen was completely shocked. Tion could simultaneously summon 4 little whites, and they could also focus their attacks. With that sort of attack power, forget about anyone else, even him with his 2,000 or so HP would be insta-killed. The cloud-stepping mare galloped onwards. Ling Chen did not stop at all, and avoided all of the monsters he saw. After half an hour, he came to the underworld entrance that Xiao Hui had found in the past, where he had first met Qian Gun. Around 100 meters to the east of the underworld entrance was the Lonely Spirit Ridge. Ling Chen glanced at the underworld entrance, but did not slow down or stop, and continued into the Lonely Spirit Ridge. There, he stopped the cloud-stepping mare. The first time he had come here, black fog had obscured the mountain ridges, and the air was deathly gray. It was a completely hellish scene. The dirt under his feet was soft and damp, and both light and fresh air seemed to avoid this place. And now, in front of him was a blackened patch of land. No, it was a blackened crater. The deepest part of it went 3 meters down into the ground. Under Shiling's heavenly wrath of the 9 suns, the flames of the 9 suns had annihilated the war demon beast and razed the entire Lonely Spirit Ridge to the ground. Countless mountain ridges had been destroyed, with not even a trace of them left. To be able to destroy mountain ridges and the ground to such an extent, one could see the might of the heavenly wrath of the 9 suns from that. Although a long time had passed, the smell of burning still lingered in this place. There was still black fog in the sky, but there wouldn't be any danger here. Because of the war demon beast, no other creatures dared to live around here or even come near. And now, because the countless mountain ridges had been eradicated, Ling Chen would be able to travel much faster on the flat ground. This place used to have many mountain ridges, and was where I first met Ling. Afterwards, there was a large fire, turning it like this. Ling Chen said as he ordered the cloud-stepping mare into a trot. Phew! Big brother, I finally caught up to you. My name is Ling, Big brother can call me Ling Ling. Wherever Big brother goes, that's where my home is. I want to follow Big brother, wherever Big brother goes, just take me as well. Okay? Because I like Big brother. Big brother, you need to keep your promises. If I can bring back some flaming black grass, you need to let me follow Big brother. Wherever Big brother goes, I'm going as well, no take-backs. Ling Chen's mind wound back to when he had first met Ling. Back then, she had worn flame-red clothes, and looked like a young girl. At that time, he didn't know that she was the crimson-red bird he had saved. Because he saved her that time, she repaid him with everything she had, and sacrificed herself twice for him. Now that Xiaoqi went to the lava purgatory, the vermilion bird would probably save Ling. Ling Chen hoped that the day Xiaoqi returned, he would also see Ling again. Was this Ling's home? Tian asked as she blinked and looked around, wondering why Shi Ling would live in such a place. Although she had never met Shi Ling, she had heard her big sisters mention her many times. She knew that Shi Ling was Ling Chen's pet, and was incredibly beautiful and powerful. Not exactly. Back then, Shi Ling was imprisoned here, and I happened to find her and decided to release her. From then on, she decided to follow me. She's left temporarily for now, but will be back soon. I'm sure Tian will definitely like her. Ling Chen said while smiling. Both Shi Ling's true form and human form were gorgeous, and anyone would immediately like her at first sight. They didn't face any obstacles the whole trip, and traveled smoothly. Back then, it took Ling Chen hours to find the central district when he first came here, but this time it took an hour to reach the exit of the Lonely Spirit Ridge. Ling Chen took out his map and confirmed where he was, then looked at the region to Lonely Spirit Ridge's east. Because of the Lonely Spirit Ridge, no one had been able to reach those mountain ridges for thousands of years, and thus that place did not have a name. Xian Gun didn't bother giving that place a name either, instead writing just 2 words, Nameless Ridge. It was exactly as it had been described, a series of mountain ridges without a name. They were already quite far from the ghastly grounds, and there was pretty much no black fog here, allowing them to see clearly. In front of them were many high and low mountain ridges. The ground here was uneven, and the mountain ridges were more sparsely spaced than at the Lonely Spirit Ridge. However, the mountain ridges were generally taller, and some extended into the clouds. Moreover, there were plants here, unlike the barren Lonely Spirit Ridge. Tian tilted her head, curiously asking, "Big brother, where is this? Are you looking for something here?" They were now past the eerie mountain ridge in the east. So what did Su'er mean by a mysterious palace? Could it be that it was hidden in some obscure place? And one of the orbs was within that palace? And why would there be a palace here? Who did it belong to? Humans? Beasts? Or another race? It should be here, Ling Chen said uncertainly. Let's have a look around. It was quite difficult to ride on a horse here, so Ling Chen hugged Tian and jumped down from the horse, then called out Xiao Hui. Xiao Hui was very sensitive towards treasures, and if there was an orb here, he would definitely be able to find it. What Ling Chen was going to do was search this entire region with Tian. According to the map, the Nameless Ridge didn't cover a very large area, and was slightly smaller than the Lonely Spirit Ridge. It would be possible to search the whole place in around 3 days. Wah, the air smells so nice here. Tian said as she deeply breathed in, with a satisfied look on her face. The ghastly grounds and Lonely Spirit Ridge smelled of death, and comparatively, the air here smelled like it was from heaven. Ling Chen held Tian's hand as she skipped alongside him, looking around her in curiosity. She had never seen such a place in the real world, and was filled with wonder. The air was refreshing and there were birds singing and insects chirping. This didn't seem like a dangerous place. After walking for a few minutes, Ling Chen became slightly more relaxed. Xiao Hui walked behind him, sniffing around, but not seeming to find anything. Ling Chen searched very carefully, and went up and down every single mountain ridge. Just like that, a whole day had passed. He had walked through 10 or so small mountain ridges with Tian, and Xiao Hui didn't show any signs of giving up. What was strange that they didn't see a single monster. Ling Chen didn't feel discouraged at all. He was sure that this was the place Su'er was talking about. Since Su'er knew so much about what he was searching for, he was confident that the Heaven Secret sect was the real deal. Since she had said there was an orb here, it was unlikely that she would be wrong. After going through another mountain ridge without any luck, Ling Chen looked at Tian and asked, "Are you tired? We can rest if you want." "I'm not tired at all. I don't feel tired when I'm with Big Brother." Tian said as she smiled. Ling Chen also smiled. This girl was quickly learning how to say sweet words. Before Shura had left them, after walking for just a short while, Tian would demand to be piggybacked, and then refuse to get off. Whoa! Hearing Xiao Hui's warning call, Ling Chen turned around. The call was quite soft, indicating that the threat was not very dangerous. Ling Chen saw a few stone balls around the size of a head rolling towards him. There seemed to be eyes on those stone balls. Monsters! Monsters had finally appeared. Ling Chen took out his weapons and prepared for battle. Instantly, information from Xiao Hui appeared in his mind. Little stone golem, type, demon, level, LV1, HP, 30. Normal stones that mysteriously developed consciousness. Has the lowest level of intelligence. Passive abilities, 30% resistance against earth-type damage. Attack skills, charge, uses its body to charge into enemies, causing very little damage. Weaknesses, wind element damage causes an additional 50% damage. Ling Chen, who had been expecting a big fight, almost fell over. After passing by the dangerous ghastly grounds and lonely Spirit Ridge, he had finally arrived at this place. Ling Chen fully expected incredibly dangerous enemies, but he had never thought that they would only be LV1. In the Forgotten Continent, only the novice village had LV1 monsters. These incredibly weak little monsters evidently couldn't tell the difference in strength between themselves and Ling Chen. After seeing Ling Chen and Tian approach, they had actually taken the initiative to come over and attack them. Ling Chen smirked, and casually swept out, turning them into rubble. Apart from broken rocks, they didn't drop anything else, not even any copper coins. Why are there LV1 monsters here? Didn't Xian Gun's map say that there's a powerful nature spirit here? Ling Chen muttered to himself. Just as he was about to put away his weapons, his expression froze and he gripped Tian's hand as he looked forwards.